Chapter 399. When the uproar erupted in Area A, Yu Zheng had drunk a round of wine and had been forced to drink quite heavily. Now he was in Frost River Reality's VIP room, repaying a favor he hadn't used. Interpersonal relationships were like this. Lips touched, phone calls connected, big or small, were favors. His family's stall in the luxury room had been broken up, and he had lost the chance to show off. He had to come here himself to apologize and express his thanks. Of course, this was also because in this circle no family was inferior to his. They were the ones he needed to seriously curry favor with. For this reason he specifically had Fan Chu prepare high-grade fruit platters, drinks and the like. He lowered his attitude and visited the VIP floor. Tonight's back and forth had already pretty much worn down his arrogance. Admittedly, there were cold and warm people in this circle, but the host was still quite close. Yu Zheng had once heard someone say that Zhou Xian, the president of Yunde Business School's elite society, had a good appearance but a violent temperament. He was known as the Butcher. But perhaps because it was their first meeting today, he couldn't see where he was violent. Yu Zheng could see that today's main character wasn't actually Zhou Xian. Instead, it was a young man with the same surname as him. He was introduced as Zhu Ling, Zhou Xian's older cousin. Zhu Ling was around 30 years old. He had a buzz cut and looked rather neat. He didn't like to talk. In this place he still didn't touch a drop of alcohol. Occasionally he would sweep his gaze over. His gaze was calm and not a bit of emotion could be seen. Yu Zheng didn't make any further conversation. He couldn't stay here for long. After a round of drinks he left. But he didn't leave immediately. He waited outside the door for Fan Chu to come out. He wanted to ask for specific information and clarify the focus of the following exchange. At this time someone passed through the corridor and walked shoulder to shoulder with Yu Zheng. As soon as they met, Yu Zheng felt that the person was familiar. He was afraid that he couldn't recognize him, so he sized him up. The person across from him sensed something and turned his head. His brows furrowed and he looked somewhat unhappy. Yu Zheng was afraid of angering him. He hurriedly bowed and laughed. "Third young master who? Are you the border shepherd's third young master who? Last month at Celestial Crystal Biology's banquet." The other person interrupted him. "Who are you?" Yu Zheng took a deep breath and smiled. "Hello, third young master. I am Yu Zheng. My father is Wuxia Pharmaceuticals Yu Qi." "Oh, Wuxia Pharmaceuticals. Your distribution business was pretty good last year." Hu Huaying smiled. She clearly had a young face, but she brought out a rigid social attitude. She politely shook hands with Yu Zheng. Clearly he didn't want to talk about it in detail. Yu Zheng had just finished a round of toasting and had worn away his arrogance. With the stimulation of alcohol his courage had grown quite a bit. He took the initiative to strike up a conversation. "Third young master, are you here to play with your friends? I don't know which room it is. I'll pay you a visit later. Maybe if there's a chance. I'm here to pick up a friend. I won't be staying for long." At this time the door to the VIP room next door opened. Fan Chu flashed out and was shocked to see two people standing outside the door. When he saw their faces clearly he was even more shocked. "Young master Hu Huaying saw that Fan Chu was dressed in work attire and made a sound of acknowledgement. She had no intention of continuing the conversation and left directly. This time Fan Chu looked at Yu Zheng with a slightly different expression. When Hu Huaying turned the corner of the corridor he asked, "You and young master Hu, we chatted a bit at the cocktail party. No one would care about this kind of cost-free boasting." Yu Zheng naturally wanted more of it. Fan Chu nodded and pointed at the door behind him. He said in a low voice, "If we meet again in a moment, don't mention young master Hu's name." Yu Zheng was astonished. "There's something between them." "Nothing. Just don't bring up other side issues." What Fan Chu said clearly wasn't true. Yu Zheng was a bit disappointed with this. In fact, he had hoped to further communicate with Hu Huaying. Although the Hu family was an upstream manufacturer, their business was mainly to order biological raw materials for major pharmaceutical companies. However, as one of the few A-rank suppliers of sky crystal biology, the Xia family and the Hu family had a close relationship. This layer of relationship had to be included. If he could take the opportunity to get to know her today, that would be ideal. What a pity. Fan Chu saw through most of his thoughts. He took the initiative to pull him a bit further away and whispered, "These two circles don't touch each other. Young master Hu is in the business circle. Young master Zhu is in the military and political circle. The people in this room might not have much net worth, but behind them are all powerful and influential. Do you see that Lieutenant Colonel Zhu Ling? He just transferred from the City Defense Army to the Coastal Defense Army. His military rank was even promoted. His future is limitless. Lieutenant Colonel. Yujing jumped in fright. When they were introduced, the other had only reported their names but not their positions. He was only in his early 30s, yet he had reached such a rank. Wouldn't he be aiming for a general in the future? That's the Lieutenant Colonel. But this one arrived later. I heard he was eating at Chonglu Pavilion upstairs. He heard young Master Sun was here, so he came to take a look. Fan Chu's wristband suddenly vibrated. Seeing the contact, he was stunned. He turned around and pushed the door open. Young Master Sun, you were looking for me? Just as Yu Zheng was feeling curious, he heard a voice from inside. Little Fan, call Yu Zheng back. This tone was firm. Fan Chu was stunned and hurriedly said, Jingzi was just chatting with someone outside. He didn't go far. The voice inside paused and then said, all right. Invite him in. Yu Zheng had long since recognized Zhu Maoxuan's voice. It would be a lie to say he didn't have a grudge against this kind of attitude. Not to mention the tone, if he hadn't spoken with Hu Huaying outside the door and was already downstairs, what would he become if Zhu Maoxuan brought him back with a single word? But the affairs of the world were like this. One set of words in front of people and another set behind their backs. In addition to the difference in status, it was normal to not pay attention to one's words and actions. Yu Zheng had done no shortage of similar things. He quickly adjusted his state of mind, tidied up his external equipment and clothes, and pushed the door open. Brother Sun, you were looking for me? Zhu Maoxuan stood up with a laugh. He hadn't yet spoken when a gang of drunkards in the room began to shout. Fuck, he accepted the challenge. It's those two. Kill them. Torture them to death. For a moment there was a hint of a crowd surge. What happened? Yu Zheng was a bit at a loss. Zhu Maoxuan very intimately wrapped his arm around his shoulder and went to the edge of the most lively area. This was the central area of the VIP room. In the middle was a three-dimensional projector which could also be used as a strategy room. The periphery was surrounded by a circle of maglev cabins. Some had people inside, some were empty. Although the overall scale couldn't compare to the hero seats in Area A, the technology was a generation ahead. Each had its own merits. The liveliness of the hero area was being broadcasted in real time here. Zhu Maoxuan didn't need to explain. Yu Zheng more or less understood the cause and effect of the situation after a few more glances. Even if there were some things he didn't quite understand, he could understand most of it through the message records of the room's ally system. Then he felt like he was in heaven. Shuelei and Luonan had both snatched hero seats at the same time. This probability was certainly due to the bonus of the luxury bag. Doxit luck. Doxit luck. And I lent it to them. Yu Zheng had the urge to immediately leave the room. Unfortunately, he really couldn't do this sort of unreasonable behavior. He didn't know what his facial expression was like, but he knew that it definitely wouldn't be good. Moreover, he still didn't understand why Zhu Maoxuan had called him back. He could only try asking, Brother Sun? Zhu Maoxuan still had his arm around Yu Zheng's shoulder. He turned his head slightly, and the overly intimate physical contact made Yu Zheng feel quite uncomfortable. His aura weakened a bit. I heard Fan Chu say that the two people who snatched the seats are your friends? Seeing Zhu Maoxuan's expression, Yu Zheng instinctively felt that things weren't good. He wasn't willing to take the blame for Luonan and Shuelei, so he responded very honestly, I just met them today. They are relatives of my little sister's classmate. They're both at Acumen College. Oh, they're at the same school as Tianxi. Tianxi? He also knew Tianxi. A certain string in Yu Zheng's heart was plucked. He wanted to turn his head to look at Fan Chu, but he was unable to move because of Zhu Maoxuan's oppressive body. Soon, that feeling was annihilated in front of Zhu Maoxuan's masked smile. Yeah. Tianxi was invited by them. They should be quite close. When the last sentence was added, Yu Zheng seemed to hear the snigger of a demon in his heart. The resentment that had been accumulating in his chest for a long time was suddenly vented. But soon, a different kind of pleasure was born, like sparks buried under the ashes of grass. Zhu Maoxuan patted his shoulder again, his eyes flashing. I say, these two guys don't have eyes. They don't have any face. They provoke public anger and still refuse to repent. If Acumen College is filled with these kinds of people, then it's pretty much done for. The true colors of the legendary butcher began to appear, and they came without any concealment. Yu Zheng felt very uncomfortable in his heart, but he had already loosened his mouth. He didn't have the qualifications to say anything. He could only stare blankly and say nothing. But Zhu Maoxuan still wanted him to continue expressing his position. For this reason he used a very intimate address. "Jingzi, you don't mind teaching these two little guys a little lesson, right?" Yu Zheng nearly blurted out, "I don't mind," but he still had a bit of basic self-respect. When the words reached his mouth, his shoulders stiffly shrugged. He feigned a casual response. "I don't mind. As long as my little sister doesn't embarrass herself too much, it's fine." Zhu Maoxuan laughed loudly as he patted his shoulder. He used a lot of strength. At this time someone else shouted, "Fuck, the system is cheap to a certain level. It's loading an infinite killing environment. It's taking advantage of the situation to shuffle the cards." Zhu Maoxuan turned his head and scolded, "What the hell are you afraid of? The VIP room is just AFK for half an hour. If you want to go, hurry up and drive them back. We'll go to that private room over there to have fun." Yu Zheng stood to the side, becoming more and more embarrassed. Zhu Maoxuan took his hand away and turned his head to ask Zhu Ling, who hadn't spoken much. "Brother, you're not coming to have some fun?" He didn't hear a response. Perhaps the other side had just made a gesture, probably refusing. Only then did Zhu Maoxuan say to Yu Zheng, "It's a lively time, so don't leave. There aren't many people here playing in the wilderness. There are still empty maglev cabins. You'll have a bit more fun." It wasn't like Yu Zheng hadn't played in the VIP room's maglev cabins. He really didn't care. But since Zhu Maoxuan had offered an invitation, it was hard for him to refuse. He hesitated and said, "My peripherals don't match." "It's fine." "Oh wait. Little fan, there's a compatibility mode, right?" There is. Fan Chu didn't look for a technician. He personally came to test it. At this point, Yu Zheng couldn't say anything to refuse. He pinched his nose and said thanks. Under Zhu Maoxuan's gaze he entered the maglev cabin. He sat in a moderately spacious seat. His body was comfortable, but his heart was completely uncertain. What did Zhu Maoxuan want to do? No matter how Yu Zheng struggled, Area A didn't lack for explosive topics tonight. Over 1,000 people were watching the scene of cursing. There was also the gambling that had been opened on the spot. All of this placed this battle of infinite slaughter on a fiercely burning bonfire. With so many people watching, there was no lack of sharp-eyed people. At the final loading stage of the environment, many people found something unusual when they saw the list of names. Fuck, there's even the VIP area mixed in. I was wondering why there were over 30. So it's just a bunch of nouveau riches making up the numbers. Like this, they'll squeeze out at least 5, 6, 7 spots, right? 20 or so is enough. Come on, let's have a total annihilation. The VIP can open a fantasy breed. That's a boss template. Sweep the trash and kill the boss. At this time, who cared about the final result? It was fine as long as they quickly gave them a good time. Before, they were the lucky ones that made people envious. They were the focus of attention. Now they had become the objects of amusement. No matter if it was positive or negative, they would gladly endure it. This was the air of eyeballs, the air of entertainment. Luo Nan, who was in the center of attention, had a strange sense of vanity. Perhaps it came from the resonance of the emotions of the masses. It was a subtle group mentality. At the same time he saw through his own thoughts, he laughed out loud and switched hero characters. Without much hesitation he chose the ace firepower player of the Earth Core, Haya, who had fought with Zhang Yingying on the ship-blocking mountain. Under the current circumstances, being a heavy-armored firepower expert was certainly not the best choice. But this was the only character Luo Nan could be said to be familiar with. This was the only one. A few seconds later, this sturdy senior officer carried the mechanical dog, Newbie. They were teleported to the cracked red earth of the wilderness. This was already a public battlefield. Shuelei had been teleported to an area 7 kilometers away from Luo Nan. He was madly dashing over to join them. Today they were the public enemies of the world. They would certainly be the targets of everyone's firepower. If they were to separate, it was very likely that they would be rubbed against the ground by this group of players. Shuelei's reaction wasn't slow, but he couldn't resist the magic of luck. The distance between the two was really too far. It was extremely difficult to quickly join forces. From the results of the Fire Eye platform's scan, Luo Nan could see that there were people charging over to intercept them. They even spoke on the public channel, "Purify the environment. Clean up the trash. Clean up the trash first, then communicate." This was the naive type. There was also a group of people who remained silent and concealed themselves. They were cautious and vigilant. This was the economic type. They didn't want to make a loss. But at most they would fire guns and set off firecrackers as soon as they entered the arena. They would go on a killing spree. This was the casual type. If someone were to question their purpose in coming here, they would definitely retort back with a single sentence. "What's the point of blindly talking about a game? I'm happy." Yeah, it was so complicated. Wasn't it tiring? Luo Nan's mind didn't have a fixed plan. He didn't think about success or failure. Ever since the game environment was matched and the battlefield of slaughter began, Sanzhou boxing practice ended. He just came here to pass the time. His consciousness fused into the character of Haya, and he brought newbie along as he walked forward. But he was a bit far from the center of the battlefield. The movement speed of the heavy firepower gunner was also very moving. When all sides were moving quickly, he didn't know how long it would take for him to bring the first enemy into his range of fire. In this small circle, Mo Peng and the others hated that they couldn't personally participate. They were 10 times more excited than Luo Nan. The group of people screamed, "Taunt! Taunt! Ha! Voice control. Give newbie the order." Luo Nan did as he was told. Then he saw the large mechanical dog that carried 2 rounds of ammunition. It barked and ran to the front. It turned around and raised one of its mechanical legs. Then he peed. Of course, the liquid that rushed out was certainly a special chemical reagent. According to the system settings, it reacted with the red earth and emitted an eye-catching yellow smoke. It rushed into the sky and then turned into a distorted dog face that deserved a beating. Haya, the hero character, also followed the established procedures. He turned the thick gun barrel in his hand and scattered the bullets into the air. He loudly announced, "Targets, walk to your final destination in the trash." To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 400. F***CK. How shameful. Luo Nan never thought that it would have this kind of effect. He could not help but curse. Mo Peng and the others were all laughing in their small circle. At this moment someone exclaimed, "Who's online again?" Luo Nan did not pay attention to the follow-up of this topic. Everyone on the battlefield had noticed his existence due to the effects of the taunt ability. Regardless of whether they were naive, economical, or casual, most of them gathered over here. Luo Nan was not stupid enough to wait for people to come over. He searched for the nearby area most suitable for unleashing his firepower. Disregarding other factors, a hill was enough. He chose a good position at the top of the hill and followed his old method. He erected a platform maximizing his firepower. Then he waited for the various people to arrive. Noob. Over 1,000 spectators who witnessed this scene had the same thoughts. Absolutely noob. Choosing a heavy firepower user in this environment was already a noob choice. Luo Nan did not have any companions to protect him. He set up his stance in an extremely conspicuous position. He was treating himself as a target. The effects of the taunt smoke were quite good. A target entered the Fire Eye platform's firing range in a short 30 seconds and was captured by the search radar. The radiation of the electromagnetic waves alerted the enemy. The enemy reacted in time and made evasive movements. Luo Nan did not hesitate at all. He used the default manual mode and pulled the trigger. Too early. Mo Peng, Tianqi and Luo Biao screamed together. The short hill in the distance was flattened by the bullets. Smoke and fire rose everywhere. The visual effect was quite good, but after a wave of bullets rained down, the results were practically zero. Luo Nan continued to fire since he did not hit. Mo Peng could not help but shout, "Can you move your finger away from the trigger for a bit?" Before his voice could fade away, the enemy was the first to panic amidst the bullets that filled the sky. He made a meaningless dodge and was hit by a stray bullet. He froze for a moment and then he was taken away by the chaotic gunfire. Luo Nan muddle-headedly obtained the first kill just like this. The background sound was weak and powerless. First blood. It was like a moan. But area boiled over because of this. The unexpected elimination brought unexpected opportunities. It was unknown how many people pressed the snatch button at this moment, hoping to become the new lucky one. Mo Ping choked on this result. Then he determined. He drowned. Look at the ammo reserves. Blacktooth's core Fire Eye platform was built on a large weight-bearing exoskeleton. Although his movement speed was slow, he was also one of the standby characters who carried the most ammo. There were 3 of each type of ammunition. Including the one on Newbie's body, there were a total of 4. The total weight was more than a ton. But Luo Nan's bold fighting style had already consumed a quarter of his ammunition base. That was equivalent to 1/16 of the total ammo was gone just like that, and this was for a similarly clumsy rookie. He still had to face close to 30 enemies. If he used this method, he would definitely run out of ammunition and food. Noob, remember to leave a bullet for yourself. Otherwise, you'll be jumping into a ring of fire. The so-called jumping into a ring of fire was a term used in the wilderness. The general idea was that one would lose the ability to fight back and be humiliated in public like a circus animal. There were all kinds of weirdos in the game, and Mo Ping was really afraid that his brother would encounter such misfortune. So he was practically shouting at the top of his lungs, "Shoot! Shoot!" The real enemies were already closing in at this time. There were 5 or 6 people who entered the firing range of the Fire Eye platform one after another. These people weren't stupid. They spread out and closed in from different directions. For a time, the search radar alarms rang out incessantly. Luo Nan turned his head in all directions and roughly assessed the situation. Then, he didn't say anything. He just directly started fighting. The Fire Eye platform radiated a beautiful fan-shaped trajectory. Even though the battlefield was set to be daytime, it was still extremely dazzling. Shooting in all directions. While Luo Nan was quite receptive to suggestions. He used burst fire, but the speed was too fast. What difference was there from shooting in all directions? In order to keep up with the tempo of 6 targets, Luo Nan even brought out Blacktooth's most powerful individual weapon, the electromagnetic sniper cannon. Along with the crackling sound of electric currents, most of the precious special ammunition was fired in the blink of an eye. The spectators in Area A fell to the ground in laughter. He can't run. He's a super noob. In just a few breaths of time, 2 base numbers of ammunition were poured out. Everyone watching couldn't help but gasp in admiration. How bold. But it wasn't just the other side that couldn't do it. Luo Nan reaped a double kill amidst the sweeping trajectory of the electromagnetic sniper cannon. The powerful electromagnetic sniper cannon directly blasted a mutant into pieces. At this time, some people could see that Luo Nan had a single bright spot amidst the mess of game skills. His control of the bullet point was pretty good. His coordination ability was adequate. There was practically no way he could fly into the sky or dive into the ground. Otherwise, even with the support of the Fire Eye platform, it wouldn't have been that easy to obtain a double kill. The problem was that there really wasn't enough space. The number of enemies gathered in the surroundings was still increasing due to the previous taunt skill. The inefficient method of attacking in all directions wasted too many opportunities to control the tempo. So much so that there were 5 enemies that entered within a range of 500 meters at nearly the same time. This was originally an effective attack zone for the Fire Eye platform. But under the interference of many parties, Luo Nan's hands and feet were bound. Though the other side didn't have heavy firepower, they still had long-range professions. Luo Nan's Fire Eye platform, which couldn't be moved, was the best target. Bullets began to streak past his body. Some exploded on the platform's defensive armor, causing sparks to fly everywhere. Some of the equipment was damaged. Whether it was Mo Peng Tianqi or Luo Biao, none of them had the energy to do anything right now. It took a long while before they managed to grind out a half-dead sentence. Let's first attack long range. Luo Nan still listened to their advice. He completely ignored the attacks coming from all directions. He concentrated his firepower on his own, hitting half of the 3rd base of ammunition before finally submerging the target. Triple kill. And it was an achievement of consecutive kills. The system's voice became deep and powerful. Haya has activated the killing mode. Okay, at least he didn't lose out on this tortoise punch. Mo Peng and the other staff officers didn't know if they should feel relieved or sullen. Luo Nan asked them for help for the first time at this time. What do we do with Haya's close-range attacks? This terrible question of sharpening a spear at the last minute made Mo Peng fall backwards in anger. Close my ass. He can play with you however he wants to when he's close. Switch targets. Hurry. Switch targets. The closest opponent was already 100 meters away from him. It was a deep blue walker. It was an exoskeleton that possessed both strength and beauty. One couldn't see the rigidity of a machine at all. The deep blue walker launched a snaking maneuver, drifting about. It was obvious that this was a veteran. The FireEye platform's radar was unable to lock onto the deep blue walker effectively. Luonan could only rely purely on manual operation at this time. But with Luonan's ammunition consumption, he might not be able to touch the deep blue walker even if he used up half of the base of ammunition. Luo Biao sighed in despair. You can call it GG. Haya doesn't have a close-range attack? Luonan didn't use his ultimate skill of submerging bullets. Instead, he sank into the pit of close-range attacks. He could only lower his head to look for his equipment. Mo Peng's eyes burned with rage as he watched. He hated that he couldn't just reach out and seize control of the FireEye platform. In the end, it was Tianqi who pointed out, there's a hand cannon mounted on the right leg. By default, it's a burst shot, but it needs to be changed to a single shot. Otherwise, the recoil will be too strong. Luonan simply tossed aside the hindering electromagnetic sniper cannon. He reached out to touch the outside of his right thigh, and the corresponding device was triggered. Sure enough, a sinister hand cannon appeared in his palm. He simply took it. At this time, the deep blue walker had already entered the 30-meter range. It began to push and accelerate, breaking through the sound barrier in the blink of an eye. Faster, see. I can't even lift the gun barrel. Luonan really didn't lift the gun barrel. Instead, he just pointed it diagonally at the ground and fired a series of bombardments. The gun barrel, which was big enough to fit an infant's fist, pulsed slightly. The ground exploded into dust and smoke, flames and liquid. A miserable hiss could be heard. The messy red earth suddenly swelled up, and a twisted and broken arthropod screeched as it struggled out. This consumed the last of its health, and it fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Haya kills people like flies. Who can stop him? The system's voice forcefully reached a climax. Whoosh. The gasps of surprise from the spectators of Area A were like the wind blowing across the prairie. They pressed the overgrown emotions into a similar shape. Giant mole cricket. There's actually such a sinister person. But he's dead. Did you see that? The radar didn't give off any warning. It didn't matter what species it was or which player was driving it. This person was able to deceive the spectators who had the omniscient view. This was admirable. But the result was that he was blasted into mush by the hand cannon. He died a miserable and sullen death. But how did he discover it? The intense advancement of the battle didn't wait for the spectators to sort out their doubts. The supersonic deep blue walker had already pounced over. The alloy blade pointed forward, and the format of fire circulated on it in a cyclonic fashion. Cyclonic blade. This was already close to a fantasy martial technique. No one had ever seen it used in reality. The might of this blade could be said to be unstoppable. The blade flashed, and the defensive armor of the FireEye platform was directly split into two. It was softer than tofu. As for Luonan, he fell backward. His exoskeleton helmet cracked and he cut an extremely sorry figure. But the moment he fell, the hand cannon, which had been pushed up by the powerful recoil, naturally lifted up. The special ammunition burst forth with sparks. Another burst of fire, and the remaining half of the ammunition in the magazine was emptied. At such a close distance, there was no reason for the bullets to miss as long as the trigger was pulled. The deep blue walker let out a pained cry. The collision at supersonic speeds was quite painful, even with the exoskeleton neutralizing the impact. Luonan borrowed the recoil to pull apart the distance. When he landed, he just happened to pick up the electromagnetic sniper cannon he had thrown down. He raised the gun and took aim. The deep blue walker endured the intense pain in his chest and performed a classic evasive maneuver. At the same time, the muzzle of Luonan's gun sprayed out a fully charged metal pellet. The heavy pellet pierced through the joint of the deep blue walker's head and neck. Its trajectory deviated slightly upwards, causing the head and half of the chest to explode. Soul strike. The system's voice exploded. Pentakill. The unstoppable Haya has filled the trash bin with the corpses of his enemies. Luonan let out a breath, lowered the gun barrel and chuckled. Other modes of action were hard to grasp, but Luonan had made Quantum Corporation one of his imaginary enemies for a month already. How could he not be working hard? Besides, he had watched the Deep Blue Walker fight before. He truly understood the classic movement modes of this toy. He had grasped the rhythm just right. Area and nearly exploded amidst Luo Nan's smile. Luo Nan's series of actions just now. Step shot, flying recoil, abandoning gun, taking gun, soul strike. He had killed 2 people in succession within 5 or 6 seconds. Let alone Mo Peng and the others, the entire group of spectators in Area A went silent for a moment. Then they exploded. F***ck me. What's going on? Mother***ker. We've been tricked. I'm a noob. I'm his ancestor. 5 empty spots. I didn't get a single one. The chaos in Area A didn't affect the progress of the massacre battlefield. No matter how beautiful Luo Nan's actions were, he had only killed 2 people. The following enemies couldn't see the marvelous scene. They only knew that the target was motionless and the barrage didn't start again. This gave them even more encouragement, making them rush forward with even more urgency. The Fire Eye platform had suffered an attack from the Deep Blue Walker's cycle blade, and most of its functions had been crippled. It was currently undergoing self-repair with great difficulty. Luo Nan held a cumbersome electromagnetic sniper cannon in his hand. He also had an empty hand cannon. His future prospects were bleak. In just 5 seconds, another player rushed forward. He also chose the mutant species. Coincidentally, Luo Nan was quite familiar with it. It was the enormous wasp-like Feng Huang. Back on ship Lanshan, Zhang Yingying had chosen this hero character at the very beginning. Luo Nan really didn't have any other choice right now, but he didn't pay any attention to the approaching threat. Instead, he whistled. This was the system's default function. It was the signal for newbie to reload. Reload your bird's egg. Down. The player who had victory in his grasp announced loudly in place of the system. A dazzling blade light appeared in the next second. The player's lower back was chopped off along with the poisonous needle. It was a fatal blow. The blade light vanished and a majestic figure wearing a minimalist exoskeleton armor stood there like a mountain. Shuelei had arrived. No one could see how he arrived. In a short 2 to 3 minutes he broke through the encirclement, crossed a distance of 7 kilometers and killed his way to Luo Nan. Shuelei had already killed 3 people in the time it took to fight and run. He had silently activated his killing mode. Of the 34 people who had entered, 10 had already been eliminated. 8 of them were the results of the 2 of them. Some of the thousands of spectators even forgot to seize the opportunity to grab a seat. They watched the live broadcast in a daze. Their minds couldn't wrap around what was going on. Papercut was probably the calmest of all the spectators. From his perspective, this kind of result was only natural. Perhaps a month ago, Luo Nan's other qualities were at the level of an ordinary person, aside from his terrifying accumulation of soul strength. But as his cultivation progressed, his soul strength returned, and the imbalance between his body and soul was gradually smoothed out. He was undoubtedly in a period of rapid transformation. His absolute strength was limited by his physique. It couldn't be considered outstanding, but his endurance, balance, coordination, reaction speed, and other indicators had all exceeded the scope of an ordinary person. The foundation of a skyscraper was compared to a few simple rooms. Even if the height was about the same, their essence was completely different. Whether it was shooting randomly or wasting ammunition, Luo Nan had been observing and capturing the rhythm. Otherwise, he would have been able to kill the enemy 3 times in a row from a distance of several hundred meters. Did he really think that it was luck? This point was most evident in the instant he achieved a pentakill. Though his opponent had entered the realm of supersonic speed, their reaction speed was a light year apart. They were 2 completely different worlds. However, there was one thing that Papercut really didn't understand. He simply asked, "How did you discover that giant mole cricket?" "I sensed it." Luo Nan was calm now. He slowly reloaded through the robot dog newbie, and answered as if it was a matter of course. "Hee, the sixth sense of a geek. Do you want to compete with us, sisters?" Mo Han mocked him mercilessly. Papercut didn't understand it so superficially. Sensed it? Luo Nan was in the virtual world and he had received guidance. His soul strength was restrained and layers of electronic signals were transformed. What the hell was he supposed to sense? Chapter 401. It's just a reaction. What else could it be? Luo Nan's answer was very brief, but he wasn't lying or brushing it off. His mental senses had been withdrawn for now, but his senses on the living starry sky level still existed. From his perspective, the surging emotions of the people around him were superficial and passionate. They were like the floating dust in the galaxy. They were affected by the self-format and they revolved and fluctuated. Luonan didn't have the time to study them for now, but there were some particularly clear targets within them. Because of the clear directivity, they posed a threat to him, so he naturally sorted them out. The level involved in this reaction was not lacking because of the conversion of electronic signals. It could be said that the early warning senses formed by a closed system were applicable to a wider and deeper area than expected. If he didn't hurry up and build it, he would be letting down this discovery. This was the thought that flashed through Luonan's mind as he slowly reloaded. By the time he finished reloading, the situation on the reality battlefield had already completely reversed. Luonan and Shuelei worked in harmony. Close-range defense and long-range offense. Shuelei cut down the nearby targets like he was chopping melons and vegetables. Luonan, who was a bit further away, became more and more familiar with the corresponding rhythm. Most of the FireEye platform was damaged, and the search radar was ineffective. But there were still two weapons that could be used. Pure manual operation, coupled with a clear sense of direction, gradually upgraded prediction and super strong reaction ability, formed a shooting precision that left one in despair. Luonan used 3 bases of ammunition during his pentakill. Then he slaughtered 4 more, but he didn't even use half of the base. The cold harvest made the vast majority of the combatants despair. The system loudly exclaimed in admiration, "What a godlike man! Haya has already turned the wilderness into a landfill." "You're the trash." A certain trash substitute who was laboriously moving on the battlefield couldn't help but curse the system back. In the next moment, a metal bullet pierced through his chest, blowing him up in midair. 10 kills. Luonan relied on this head to complete his 10 kills. The system simply let the entire battlefield shine with red light. It was like the surging waves of a sea of blood rolling endlessly. Super God. Super God. The incomparable Haya. All mortals tremble beneath his feet. There was no need for special effects. The entire Area A was greatly shaken. Exclamations, curses and cheers converged into a surging sound wave that engulfed this space. It must be said that Luonan's extreme counterattack was really super cool. Even though everything happened in the blink of an eye, his coordination and reaction speed that far exceeded a normal person's allowed him to fully stretch his limbs, making him appear very relaxed. And all of this was projected onto the real battlefield through the feedback of the hero's seat's electronic signals. He was also secretly supported by the game effects. The feeling he gave others was that he was calm, confident and had plenty of spare time. Next, with Shuelei's cover, he reloaded at a moderate pace, controlled his pace and took their heads one by one. He looked quiet and cold and he hit the girl's G-spot. Carefree screams rang out incessantly. Even Ruan Zihue, Chiu Peipei and Tianxi in the Alliance channel were full of praise and excitement. Why didn't I see this before? This scheming man. Mo Peng's heart was burning again. In the past it was the fire of impatience, but now it was the fire of jealousy. Robio was also scratching his head. I remember that he used to be a super noob. It didn't seem like he was faking it earlier. Fine, I'm impressed by his acting skills. Just as Tianqi was about to express his emotions, he received an inquiry from his cousin. Tianqi, is there anyone else in the room who's in the battlefield? Of course not. There are only a few slots. Damn it, I was so focused on looking that I forgot to fight for all the empty slots in front of me. Tianxi's mind had yet to recover from the shock, and she only cared about feeling upset. Tianxi asked, "No? Who said, go online, just now?" Perhaps it was because girls were more attentive, but Emohan also responded. "That's right, I remember someone saying that." "Ah, I was right." Tianqi finally remembered that a few minutes ago his mind had been completely occupied by the intense battle, and he had no time to pay attention to anything else. When Tianxi reminded him, he found it strange. He went back and flipped through the records and soon he found a clue. There's really someone in the battlefield, but he's anonymous in the Alliance channel and he's offline. Hey, do you have to deceive yourself like this? Who is it? Come out and claim it yourself. Just now, most of the people in the Alliance channel have spoken. Who's the one who hasn't? Mo Peng intentionally spoke in a gloomy manner, but soon he was unable to hold himself back and laughed. No matter who it is, Go and defeat a student Haya. I'm talking about you, student Shuele. You can only watch from the sidelines. You can't rely on numbers to win. Which youngster these days was an idiot? Even if Mo Peng left a thin layer of window paper, who wouldn't understand with just a bit of thought? Yuzheng, this person really ran into the reality battlefield. Judging from his silent attitude, what he was thinking must be very subtle. Luo Biao was a bit puzzled. He's a VIP too. He couldn't have booked another room, right? The thickness of Yuzheng's skin had already been tempered. Even though he was mocked coldly, he pretended not to see it. He maintained his silence from beginning to end. It was because of his attitude that Yu Qin and Turner, who were still occasionally interacting with each other, entered an awkward state of silence. On the reality battlefield, Luo Nan suddenly put away his gun and said, "Let's retreat." As he spoke, Luo Nan gave up on the fire control platform, which had already been reloaded with ammunition. He only took his hand cannon, the electromagnetic sniper cannon, and a small amount of ammunition. He turned around and left. Shuele didn't utter a word. He covered Haya from the side. After abandoning the Fire Eye platform, Haya no longer lived up to his reputation as a heavy firepower expert. His movement speed was quite increased and he ran madly all the way down the hill. They had just left when a powerful light suddenly flashed in the distant horizon. It was as if a fragment of the sun had been thrown into the mortal world. With just a flash, it smashed where Luo Nan and Shuele had been. The ground shook and a pillar of fire erupted from the top of the hill. The abandoned Fire Eye platform, as well as the surrounding corpses that had yet to be refreshed by the system, and the traces of battle, all melted away within the light of the flames. Oh my, a mid-range particle cannon? Area A was in an uproar. As spectators, the most basic preferential treatment was the enjoyment of an omniscient view. As the perspective of the broadcast switched, everyone could see a dazzlingly cool-looking bird-shaped machine 5 kilometers away. It had already raised its wings and the large metal wings reflected the sunlight. The brightness continued to increase, becoming resplendent and dazzling. The particle cannon just now originated from this and now it was charging power once more. There was absolutely no such weapon platform in the real world. This was a fantasy weapon. It was one of the options in the game 10 Days in the Wilderness. For the sake of pursuing gameplay and cool feeling, it had the least connection to reality. The official name of the bird-shaped exoskeleton was Phoenix. It was a very typical type. Although it was called a phoenix, it was unable to fly freely in the sky. However, the particle cannon it carried had an extremely long attack range and its power was enormous. The game system needed to be balanced, so it reduced its attack frequency and obliterated its close combat ability. This could barely be considered a balance. However, there were still many people who were obsessed with the power of mass destruction. They used Phoenix to satisfy their craving. It was not strange for one or two Phoenix to appear in a battle. But the problem was that this Phoenix was clearly still charging power. Another cannon shot came down from midair, chasing after Luo Nan and Shuele. A sea of fire immediately formed behind the two. They had simply charged out from the flames. How are they so fast? The spectators in Area A were puzzled at first, but they were all in an uproar as the camera moved. There was still one. No, a total of 4 phoenixes. They were separated from Luo Nan and Shuele by 3 to 5 kilometers. This was an area that the radar could not illuminate. Even a fantasy weapon like the Phoenix would not be able to do so. But reality was that the precision of the 2 cannon shots was remarkable, and there were some clear targets. It didn't make sense. In this hilly terrain, 1 or 2 phoenixes could find the angle, but the others were completely blind. How could they guarantee their precision? Luo Nan and Shuele could be seen running madly in the reality battlefield while the 4 phoenixes took turns firing their particle cannons. Though they came from different directions, they all maintained an inconceivable degree of accuracy. Luo Nan and Shuele escaped death time and time again, but their armor was already on the verge of collapse. A godly gunner combination? Look at the list. They're all in the VIP room. Do they have some special function? Most of the spectators were puzzled no matter how they thought about it, but the people in the Allied channel had already obtained the answer through awkward silence. In the end it was Mo Peng who sneered, "Godly gunner? They're godlike observers." Before his voice fell, Luo Nan, who had been running madly without rest, came to an urgent stop. He seized the gap between the 4 Phoenix particle cannons and raised his hand cannon. The omniscient view showed that the closest phoenix to him was 1,500 meters away. Gunshots rumbled continuously. 70 meters away, a certain small mound of dirt suffered from concentrated fire. It was instantly plowed by the powerful hand cannon ammunition. What's going on? The group of people had yet to come to a realization when they saw a figure leap out from behind the small mound of dirt. It was a deep blue walker. His speed was extremely fast and his dodging movements were quite skillful. He ran and jumped, occasionally rolling a few times. His movements were extremely fluid. However, his luck was quite bad when facing Luo Nan, who was already a super god. Luo Nan's last bullet from his hand cannon directly broke through his armor and struck a vital spot. Instant death. Since this attack had been launched for quite some time, it did not count as a combo. The system only responded with a powerless first blood. But the spectators in Area A had already subconsciously leaned toward the most dazzling star on the battlefield by a large margin. They were brought to a small climax. 666. He didn't forget to reap even when fleeing. That bro hid himself quite well. He must have been preparing to nest until the very end. A calamity descended from the heavens. No, a super god descended from the heavens. But where's the particle cannon? Someone finally discovered the problem. From then on, the second wave of particle cannons formed a deviation that seemed to cross the entire Pacific Ocean. Luo Nan was too lazy to move. He climbed up another mound of high ground and used the electromagnetic cannon to snipe at the phoenixes one by one. 4 phoenixes had already been set up and were still in the charging phase. They became the best targets. 3 phoenixes were blasted away by high explosive rounds in a row. Luo Nan activated his killing mode. With great difficulty, the farthest particle cannon had exceeded Luo Nan's firing range. It had calculated the coordinates and was about to charge its power successfully, but Luo Nan, who was on top of the mound, suddenly disappeared the instant before the particle cannon was fired. Your target has left the game. Huh. Luo Nan was stunned for a moment, but his blade suddenly flashed. Shuelei, who had been hiding and moving swiftly, was killed painfully. Everything turned to ash. Faster, Xikemi. Banging sounds rang out from within the maglev cabin. The 4 second generations that were participating in the battle exited the cabin one after another. All of them were gnashing their teeth. Zhu Maoshuan didn't join the game, but his expression was extremely ugly. Someone shouted, "That bro named you is really useless. He can't even hide properly?" If he persisted for another 5 seconds, he would have definitely killed those 2. Hey, where's he? He shifted his gaze and saw the maglev cabin Yu Xing was in. A red light lit up outside. Then the cabin automatically opened and Yu Xing practically rolled out. Under the bombardment of Luo Nan's hand cannon, he was forced to carry out a series of dodges. The bullets that constantly brushed past his body completely controlled his rhythm, forcing him to perform operations that exceeded his limits. He did it in a daze. He finished it in a daze. Then the evil consequences of exceeding his limits came rolling back. He did his best to cover his mouth, but he was unable to hold it in. The alcohol and snacks he had stuffed into his stomach sprayed out through the gaps between his fingers. There was even quite a bit that splashed onto his face. Chapter 402. Super God Haya, who already held the absolute advantage, suddenly logged off. His partner, who was unparalleled in close combat, did the same after killing the last phoenix. This behavior didn't conform to the logic of a normal person. It caused the onlookers in Area A to discuss spiritedly. There were even some who shouted about shady dealings. It was a scene of chaos. The VIP room was also a mess. Yu Xing struggled in his own vomit. Snot and tears sprayed out. The physiological effects and psychological effects of this were probably the same. The room's self-cleaning system was activated, and a multifunctional robot came up to clean. The group of second-generation kids were avoiding snakes and scorpions. No one could stay in the room any longer. Zhu Ling, who had been sitting on the sofa all this time, stood up and walked outside. "Brother!" Zhu Maoshuan shouted and hurriedly chased after him. Before he left, he instructed Fan Chu, "Take this, brother. No, let's switch rooms first. You watch him. You can go over after you clean up." Zhu Maoshuan didn't pay attention to Fan Chu's reaction after he finished speaking. He directly chased after Zhu Ling. When he reached the door, he saw Zhu Ling communicating with someone through his wristband. He hadn't gone far. Zhu Maoxuan breathed a sigh of relief, but he also had a headache. He hated Luonan and Tianxi ever since the disastrous failure of his courtship at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He had been looking for an opportunity to vent his anger. Tonight he learned from Fan Chu that Luonan and Tianxi had come over. He wanted to trip them up and give this adulterous couple a taste of his own medicine. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, but he wouldn't have any face to do so. It just so happened that his cousin and a group of military officers were upstairs being invited to a banquet. The identities of both parties attending the banquet were quite special. He wanted to borrow this opportunity to play a bit more clever. Who would have thought that the opening he chose was that Yu Jing didn't know how to do things? He had people evacuate the room early on, causing a disturbance in the hero seat. Zhu Maoxuan had been impulsive for a moment. He wanted to play around in the game before he acted in reality to warm up the place. He never expected to be slapped in the face by someone else. There was a risk of failure in all his plans. Zhu Maoxuan was fully aware that his cousin thought highly of himself. Now that he had transferred from the city defense to the field forces, it was time for him to care about his reputation. It wasn't a big deal to help him out normally, but if he did things too viciously, Zhu Maoxuan probably wouldn't put in any effort. His mind was spinning like a windmill, thinking of how to persuade her. Unexpectedly, Zhu Ling glanced at him. When he picked up the phone, he no longer used the guttural ventriloquism that the military was accustomed to. He switched to normal speech mode. "Little brother Wei Qin. Yes, I'm still down at Frost River Reality." Zhu Maoxuan's ears perked up as soon as he heard the 3 words younger brother Wei Qin. His plan for tonight's most ideal situation, aside from his older cousin Zhu Ling, also included dragging this younger brother Wei Qin into the water. It was just that he wasn't sure if the rumors he'd heard were useful or not. He could only deal with it as a contingency plan. Zhu Ling glanced at him again and said his name. "Yes, it's Maoxuan. There's no need. I'm almost done here. I'll go up immediately." As soon as Zhu Maoxuan heard this, he thought, this is bad. He didn't care if he would anger Zhu Ling as he gestured repeatedly. Zhu Ling ignored him and continued to exchange pleasantries. Just when Zhu Maoling was about to give up all hope, the topic suddenly changed. "All right, I'll wait for you for a while." Zhu Maoxuan nearly choked and forgot to be happy. Zhu Ling hung up and turned his head to look at Zhu Maoxuan. "Aren't you waiting for him?" Zhu Maoxuan knew that he could not play dumb in front of Zhu Ling, so he no longer concealed it. A happy expression appeared on his face as he cupped his hands in thanks. "It's all thanks to you, brother Ling." Zhu Ling's face was indifferent, but his eyes were very sharp. "That Qin fellow is arrogant to his bones. He never gives favors for free. It seems that he's plotting something big this time." Zhu Maoxuan thought to himself, nonsense. He's the vice president of the student council. His father is the deputy chief of staff of the city defense army. Everyone knows that he's plotting something when he finds someone from your field army for a drink despite being 2 streets away. Thinking about it, Qin Wei Ken is about to graduate. Perhaps he's starting to pave the way for his future? He's not going to continue his studies and is going to develop his career in the military? Zhu Maoxuan didn't care about what Qin Wei Ken was plotting. He only cared about tonight's grand plan to trample on people. He only cared about whether or not it would be carried out smoothly. He laughed mischievously. "I invited him to drink some wine and meet his underlings. What kind of favor is that?" Zhu Ling stared at him. "What about going a step further?" Zhu Maoxuan gave a crafty smile. "That's what I owe you, brother Ling." Seeing him like this, Zhu Ling suddenly laughed. "All right, it just so happens that there's something I need your help with." Zhu Maoxuan's heart was empty, but he quickly patted his chest. "Brother Ling, I will absolutely not discount your orders." As they were speaking, the door to the VIP room in the back opened. Fan Chu hurriedly came out and saw his brothers chatting outside the door. He was a bit embarrassed, but he forced a smile and dodged towards the corridor. Zhu Maoxuan was a bit annoyed when he saw this. "What are you doing? Didn't I tell you to change rooms?" Fan Chu hurriedly said, "Young Master Sun, I'm going to handle this matter. Please wait a moment. What about that Yu Zheng in the room? I've already called someone. Here they're coming. I guarantee that they'll sober him up quickly and clean him up." Zhu Maoxuan saw that there really was a waiter coming over. He grunted and raised his chin, telling Fan Chu to get lost. Zhu Ling muttered to himself in silence while Zhu Maoxuan was berating Fan Chu. It wasn't until the waiter walked past him and entered the VIP room that he opened his mouth and said, In a moment before Chen Weikan arrives, go to that room. Not together? No. You go first. You go together with that Yu Zheng. Zhu Ling glanced at his cousin and spoke with a tone that could not be refused. Just the two of you. Zhu Maoxuan was stunned. This didn't seem right. While Zhu Maoxuan was dizzy, Fan Chu's head was full of questions. He was very vexed. From his perspective, Zhu Maoxuan's request to change rooms was preposterous. Everyone knew that resources like the VIP room had to be reserved. Now that Frost River reality was full, changing rooms was easier said than done. Fortunately, his luck was pretty good tonight. After a delay of 2 minutes, there was a VIP room that wanted to check out. He used a god-level operation to get the room before the customers lined up to reserve it. But just as he spoke to the group of second-generation young masters in the room, the VIP room guide sent a message. The customer who just checked out refused to leave and requested to renew the room. If this was the case, Fan Chu could have used the excuse of store regulations to evade it. But he heard 2 names from the guide. Young Master Xia, Young Master Hu are both here. Fan Chu's heart was about to explode. He barely managed to deal with Zhu Maoxuan's questions. He took a few steps around the corridor and arrived outside the Frost 7 room. The door to the VIP room was wide open. The beautiful guide was at the door, dealing with the questions of the customers inside. For a time she was in a difficult situation. Why didn't you wait for us to leave before initializing it? Isn't Frost River reality supposed to preserve the data of all VIP customers? Canceling or renewing a subscription is very normal. We admit that we lost our reservation, but we haven't even unloaded our equipment. We haven't even left the door. Why are you doing this to us? We won't make things difficult for you. Where's Yinlu? You can have her come over and communicate with us. Fan Chu's heart was filled with bitterness when he heard the name Yinlu. If he really did attract that person, then his position as store manager would be pretty much abolished. He was a clever person. Although he had not entered, he had a general understanding of what was going on from these snippets of conversation. In the end, it was a disaster caused by him forcefully cutting the queue. In order to replace the customers who had made reservations, he had done a small violation of the rules. Before the automatic cancellation process was completed, he had initialized Frost 7's data a few seconds in advance. As long as the customers truly wanted to leave, this was nothing. However, when they changed their minds and wanted to renew the reservation, the 2 processes did not verify each other's faults. This caused a loophole. But what was going on with the data? Fan Chu pondered for a moment. He braced himself and walked in. He saw that there weren't many people in the room. Aside from young Master Xia, young Master Hu, Xie Junping and Hu Huaying, there was a relatively unfamiliar person. He looked like a pale scholar, but his voice was very sharp. Most of the questioning words came from his mouth. Young Master Xia, young Master Hu, sorry. I'm the manager here, Fan Chu. Sorry for what happened just now. It might be because of the opening of a new store. There are some problems with the system connection. It's not just this room. The other room, Frost 2, also has a similar problem. We are currently working on solving it. Fan Chu gathered his courage and secretly used a trick. He was prepared to put these 2 headaches together and solve them together. Renewing the reservation is definitely not a problem. However, reserving the room is a bit difficult. If the 3 of you don't mind, can we switch rooms? If Xie Junping agreed, Fan Chu dared to let them go to Frost 2 where Zhu Maoxuan and the others were. They would swap rooms and make the disturbance disappear without a trace. He had a good plan. Unfortunately, the crux of the matter did not lie here. Fan Chu, is it? Let's not talk about renewing the reservation for now. I want to ask you right now. How are you going to return the data that was erased by your initialization? The one who spoke was Xie Junping. He was dressed rather strangely today. He wore a retro training suit and a button gown that was loose from top to bottom. At first glance, he really did have the air of an immortal. It was just that his face was dark and his mood was terrible. That's right. Who cares about this shitty room? We want the data. The data. The brother with the shrill voice was certainly a bit neurotic. He was clapping his hands and shouting. He was extremely excited and he felt as if he could go crazy at any moment. Fan Chu felt that things weren't too good. He probed, Young Master Xia, are you talking about the game data? We definitely have it here. If we switch to any other room, we can seamlessly access it. Bullsh**t game. The neurotic brother jumped. He really jumped. He jumped again and again as he waved his fists. That was the structure of the magic array that I painstakingly deduced. I finally had a bit of inspiration with great difficulty, and now it's all King ruined. Ruined. It wasn't successful in the first place. Hu Huaying was the most indifferent of the three. He had always disapproved of Xie Juanping's methods, so he muttered in a low voice. Neurotic, oh, he was actually the former president of the Mystic Arts Research Society, Du Yong. His ears were extremely sharp. When he heard this, he glared at him and cursed, "Screw off. Amateurs shouldn't interrupt." Hu Huaying was too lazy to bicker with a neurotic person. He just silently gave him the middle finger. Xie Juanping's face was still dark as he stared at Fan Chu. We used the projector in the VIP room to make changes to the design. We tossed and turned for the better part of a day and we were close to success. Then with your initialization everything was wiped clean. And these are things that I will have great use for very soon. Tell me clearly right now. Does your system automatically save them? Can I get my data back? Fan Chu's forehead was beaded with sweat. He knew that this matter would not be easily resolved. In the end he did not dare to answer directly. He could only say, "Young Master Xia, I will immediately contact the technicians and do my best to give you a satisfactory answer." Xie Juanping's feet moved. Based on his previous temper he would have already kicked him. However, this period of abiding by the precepts and cultivating still had some effect. The nameless fire stirred and was actually suppressed again. He silently recited, "Abiding by the precepts and advancing diligently, restraint comes first." Then he no longer paid attention to Fan Chu and turned to Du Yong. "Sissy, who else do you think can do it according to the previous draft?" Du Yong was irritated. He paced in place, grinding for a long time before saying, "When it comes to the mystic arts, I still rather admire Tang Yi." "Then contact her and ask her for help." Du Yong gaped. Whatever neurosis and irritation had disappeared. All that was left was embarrassment and embarrassment. Xie Juanping was finally irritated when he saw this. He stepped forward and grabbed Du Yong by the collar. "You led me through the door and then this happened. So what if you help me ask someone?" Du Yong did not have any temper at this moment. He even stuttered, But Tang Yi, he's not likely to care." "How do you know if you don't ask?" "Then can I ask?" Xie Juanping took a deep breath and let go of Du Yong's collar. He took 2 steps back and massaged his temples in thought for a moment. He dialed a number through his wristband. After a few seconds the call connected. He coughed and naturally lowered his posture. "Nanster, there's something I want to ask you. It's about, how do I say it, it's about a problem in the mystic arts. Aren't you very good at very interested in this? So, I want to ask about this thing about magical arrays." Xie Juanping's stuttering appearance was too different from before. Even Du Yong, who was conflicted about whether or not to call Tang Yi, could not help but turn his head to look. Xie Juanping did not care about this. He walked a few steps deeper into the room and grunted in response. Suddenly he raised his voice. "Hey, you're at Frost River Reality? Which store?" "Aurora Cloud City." "Holy crap." Xie Juanping suddenly became excited. Hurry up, hurry up. I'm at Frost 7 in the VIP area. Husseiner and Sissy Du are also here. Can't leave? Entertaining friends? That group. Can I go? Which room? Luxury room A, Frost 7. Okay, we'll be right there. He hung up and clapped his hands. Don't worry about this for now. Hey Sissy Du, did you get through? Du Yong responded with a bitter face. Tang Yi said she has a party tonight, a date tomorrow, and a mission the day after tomorrow. She won't take any orders. Xie Juanping rolled his eyes. Then let's disband. Nanster and his friends are here. Let's go meet them. Yeah, let's see if there are any other opportunities to turn things around. As he spoke, his gaze turned to Fan Chu. You prepare 4 exquisite fruit platters and enough alcohol. Oh no, non-alcoholic drinks. Send them to Frost 7. Be quick. Also, we can't delay here. Hey, why are you in a daze? Do you remember? Frost 7, Frost 7. How could Fan Chu not remember? He had personally given this room to Yu Jing an hour ago to give him face. There was indeed a young man called Nanster inside. He was Zhu Maoxuan's target tonight. And he was also deeply involved in it. Fan Chu's mind buzzed. Every word that entered his ears seemed to carry a tone of ridicule. He did not make a sound. With great difficulty he used his many years of habit to nod in agreement. Then he turned around in a panic, forgetting that the guide was behind him. His foot hooked onto the guide's high heels. His body instantly lost balance and he fell forward. The guide cried out involuntarily. Chapter 403. A magical array? Luonan hung up. He was still a bit confused for a time. He did not find it strange that Xie Junping had appeared in Frost River reality. However, he had not understood the logic behind the topic of mystic arts. Speaking of the mystic arts and magical arrays, Luonan could transfer a few people to teach Xie Junping with his current connections. But with the difference in understanding between the inner world and the secular world, Luonan could not afford to make a fool of himself in the end. In case he encountered a swindler or something. Luonan felt that he should first help Xie Junping check things out. However, Luonan's focus was not on this right now. The reason why he wanted to quit the game and give up on the hero seat despite his irreversible victory was because the important person he invited, Cat Eyes, had already arrived. She had contacted him through the Hexier. He came out of the room while he was talking to Xie Junping. He stood by the door and waited. The call ended. He had already sensed Cat Eye's arrival, but his gaze swept over her. He was unable to immediately catch sight of her. Only when the real person stood before him and looked at him quietly did Luonan lock onto his target. Today, Cat Eyes was dressed in a minimalist style. She wore a light blue high-waist skirt, a white sweater and nude high heels. She was so plain that not a single pattern could be seen. This was the first time Luonan saw her wearing a skirt, so he was unable to recognize her at first glance. However, it must be said that it was hard to change a person's habits. She was clearly wearing a plain dress, but Cat Eyes wore a black motorcycle jacket over it. The jacket was adorned with rivets. Paired with her parted hairstyle that covered half of her eyes, her large earrings on one side, and her fiery red lip makeup, she exuded a decadent aura that said, "I am very beautiful, but I will destroy myself at any moment." Cat Eyes must have drunk before coming. The faint smell of alcohol lingered around her as she stood before him. It was faint but not unpleasant. In his heart, Luonan felt that Cat Eye's current outfit was very beautiful. At the very least, it was more appealing to his taste than the nightclub style or the street dance style of the past. Cat Eyes tilted her head slightly and sized him up. Luonan did not know what she was thinking, but he could see disdain, provocation and so on in her slightly raised eyes. She lacked the goodwill that a fellow practitioner should have. In the next moment, a smile blossomed on Cat Eye's face and lips. It was just like her makeup. Her plain foundation was strong. She took another step forward and was already sticking to Luonan's shoulder. She reached out her hand and hooked onto the crook of the arm of the boy in front of her. However, Cat Eyes was wearing high heels. She was taller than Luonan by 4 or 5 centimeters. This action was like a deformed hug between old friends. In short, it was very intimate, especially when her slightly greasy red lips pressed against Luonan's ear. She lightly breathed, "Master, I will heed your call." The combination of alcohol and perfume produced an intoxicating magnetic force. Luonan's body froze for a moment. He was definitely nervous. This was the first time in his life that someone had called him master, especially a beautiful woman who was so close to him. He could feel the warmth and elasticity of her body through half of his arm. At this moment, Luonan could faintly feel that there were 2 to 3 types of hormones secreting abnormally within his body. This caused his heartbeat, blood pressure and so on to rise. He even felt hungry. However, after the physical reaction, a more subtle psychological factor arose. He couldn't distinguish more details, but he was unusually sensitive to the stimuli that caused it. His body did not move, but his eyes passed over Cat Eye's shoulder and stared straight ahead. He whispered, "What did you call me?" "My master, the man who dominates me." Cat Eyes let out a low laugh. Her greasy breath lingered around Luonan's ear and neck. Luonan's eyebrows jumped. Cat Eyes' voice was sharp and clear. But when she deliberately lowered her voice, it had a metallic quality to it. It was like a light and thin blade scraping away fine lint while sticking close to a person's skin. It was comfortable and chilling. It was just like what Cat Eyes was doing right now. Her body created a sense of intimacy, but her bones were ice-cold vigilance and resistance. There was even an even more hidden and intense inclination towards destruction. Tisk. Luonan was a bit annoyed. Did this mean that his good intentions weren't repaid? Originally, he wanted to call her over and have a good chat. It would have been fine if she had maintained her previous indifference, but who was she trying to mock by putting on the face of a mistress? Could it be that I really want to destroy you? It was this flashing thought that suddenly touched a certain button in a complex physiological and psychological mechanism. He suddenly froze for a moment, and a certain advanced thought burst out of its eggshell. It was like a gorgeous and malevolent viper, emitting a hissing hiss. It was very easy to destroy. This thought was born, and the first thing to respond was his body's instincts. In an instant, the secretion of various hormones within his body exploded. His heartbeat, blood pressure, and hunger increased once more. Together, they formed a feeling of excitement that he had never felt in his entire life. The excitement was so sudden and intense that an astonishing heat burst forth from his internal organs. His entire body seemed to swell by a size. This sudden burst of energy acted on his nervous system. Luo Nan's forearm unconsciously raised to exert force, but it touched Cat Eye's elbow. He subconsciously closed his fingers and firmly grasped it. The motorcycle jacket was embedded with rivets in this position. The metal granules pressed into his palm, giving him a bit of pain. Cat Eye's mocking name came in a 3-hit combo at this time. Master, what do you need? Heh. Luo Nan looked straight ahead. He did not look at Cat Eyes, and he only let Cat Eyes see his side profile. After a hot and dry breath, the corners of his lips curled up. He exerted a bit of strength in his cheeks, but it was nothing compared to the restlessness of the living starry sky. The stimulation from the slight pain in his palm forced out a fidgety and unyielding emotion. It was like a fireball, the sound of it piercing straight into the sky. It burned the living starry sky, causing all the stars in the sky to lose their color. The others were fine, but the life sketches of the believers who were closely related to him had minute deformations. There was the possibility of them becoming chaotic and unbalanced in the next moment. Cat Eyes was not the only one affected by this. Luo Nan finally sensed that something was wrong. His thoughts changed once more and his impulsive emotions submerged. Only then did he put an end to the surging waves of the living starry sky. The danger did not manifest. It only rippled slightly on a level that was hard for the believers to detect. And Cat Eyes clearly did not sense it at all. So in essence, Cat Eyes was just saying it. She was powerless against her own fate. How pitiful. The restless emotions were suppressed, and Luo Nan recovered his usual way of thinking. He targeted Cat Eyes, and there was even a faint feeling of pity. Say, this description was far too hypocritical. In any case, Luo Nan temporarily erased those extreme thoughts. The difference in the positioning of the living starry sky naturally pushed his state of mind to a higher level. It erased most of his misgivings, allowing him to speak more leisurely and casually. Let's call you something else. This name is too funny. Cat Eyes did not know that a deadly storm had silently arisen in the space of a single breath. It had silently dispersed. Her heart was filled with negative emotions, but they were pushed to her face. They transformed into endless mockery and stimulation. So my boss. Do you? Luo Nan actually had some self-awareness of being a boss. Perhaps in Cat Eye's eyes he had a similar image. There was no point in forcefully seeking to change it. He was still holding Cat Eye's elbow at this time, and the two's bodies were pressed together in a more powerful manner. It was fine when Luo Nan was in a restless mood, but something was wrong now. Luo Nan took the initiative to let go and spoke softly. Brother Papercut will come over in a bit. I'll wait for him here. You go in first. Leister is inside. Cat Eyes was clearly stunned when she heard the names Papercut and Shuelei. This situation was a bit different from what she had imagined. He felt a bit awkward. Perhaps. Yes, boss. In the end, Cat Eyes let go of Luo Nan's arm. She wore a smile that was both intoxicated and mocking as she walked into the room. Luo Nan did not move at all. After he let go, his slightly outstretched arm was actually stiff. Of course, his words were just an excuse. He had contacted Papercut long ago. Papercut and Tianxi were in the strategy room right now. They would come over in a moment. It wasn't like he didn't know the place. What was there to welcome? The reason why he said this was because he needed a buffer. Tonight's meeting was far from what he had originally imagined. Without Papercut, not only did he not know what to say, but his mood was also off. Yes, the restlessness that he had just suppressed had come to add to the chaos after Cat Eyes left. The entrance to the luxurious room was wooden. Area A's 2D and 3D interweaved. The gorgeous and bewildering light and shadow effects made him even more annoyed. Advertisements were inevitable in such a crowded area. 7 or 8 out of 10 advertisements were supported by handsome men and beautiful women. Luo Nan had seen them in the past, but now that he saw the beautiful female stars flashing across the hologram, his feelings were different. Really was different. Back when he was facing cat eyes, he had only used simple concepts and descriptions. He had thought of them and used them when he felt that they were appropriate. But now, under the bewildering light and shadow, these rigid concepts were like the residual sensations on half of his body. They were faintly discernible, but they came alive one after another. The entire world that operated according to established laws and principles was becoming more and more complex and chaotic. Luo Nan subconsciously licked his lips. He waited for over a minute, but Papercut had yet to return. Even Xia Junping, who said he would come to ask for guidance, was nowhere to be seen. Though there were only cat eyes and Shui Lei in the room, the atmosphere was strangely harmonious. They were chatting happily. All of this was reflected in Luo Nan's sensory network. It was as if he could see it with his own eyes. Shui Lei asked Cat Eyes about her occupation. He was very curious about the lifestyle of a veteran ability user. Cat Eyes picked up a piece of fruit and answered casually, "I'm just an ordinary dance teacher. I partnered up with someone to establish a studio. It's mainly for short-term training in the entertainment circle. Occasionally I'll do some choreography." "Wow, you get to meet a lot of celebrities." "Not really. I mainly train newcomers. There are quite a few silly, sweet and black-bellied women who dream of being a celebrity. But a considerable portion of them might go drink and sing with celebrities in the blink of an eye. It's very interesting." Cat Eyes said to Shui Lei with a smile, "If you have the time, you can come to my place to earn some extra money. You can get to know some pretty girls." She gestured to Shui Lei, "A young, strong and fit coach like you. Those women would love nothing more than to swallow you whole." Shui Lei's face immediately flushed red. He waved his hand over and over. I don't know how to dance." Traditional martial arts routines are also a type of dance. Even though live-action movies have declined, there has always been a market for superpowers, martial arts and the like. Many management companies have a demand in this area. I still have to go help out with the gym master." Shui Lei still couldn't quite accept such a dirty topic. He found an excuse for himself with great difficulty, but the heavens knew that Divine Yu Gym was about to close down. What else could he help out with? Cat Eyes went, "Oh, I have an impression that you came from a Daoguan. Do you want to open a Daoguan and accept disciples in the future?" "Yeah. That would be extremely ideal for me. Like the gym master or like the society's Mr. Giant Arm." They were already talking about their ideals. It shouldn't be a problem to go in, right? Luo Nan took a deep breath, put on an indifferent expression and walked into the room. Cat Eyes saw Luo Nan enter, but she pretended not to see him. Her behavior was completely different from her intimate behavior outside. On the other hand, Shui Lei let out a long breath. His tall and sturdy body shrunk into the sofa, indicating that he couldn't handle this big sister. It was better for Nanster to do it. Other than the luxurious seats under the suitcases, there was also a sofa in the corner of the large luxurious room used for conversation. Right now, Shui Lei and Cat Eyes were sitting on either side of the sofa in the corner. Cat Eyes was in the middle and Shui Lei was in the corner, maintaining a polite social distance. Luo Nan looked around and walked over. He wanted to sit next to Shui Lei when he started walking, but in the blink of an eye he had already bypassed the coffee table and walked to the middle seat. He was going to sit together with Cat Eyes. Shui Lei didn't think too much about it. He picked up a canned drink from the coffee table and tossed it over. He said, "You haven't even eaten the fruit platter yet. If you put any more, the taste will change." Luo Nan caught the drink and conveniently sat next to Cat Eyes. The sofa must have been too soft. His body sunk down the moment he sat down. The polite distance between them suddenly shortened by quite a bit. When he stretched his body to grab the fruit, he was once again pressed against Cat Eyes' body. He didn't know where he touched, but he felt as if his shoulder and elbow had been electrified. Moreover, perhaps it was the stimulation of the gastric juices, but his mouth was secreting large amounts of saliva. His cheeks and the corners of his mouth were numb and even his breathing had changed. Was he nervous? Or was he enjoying it? Luo Nan wanted to do a bit of self-analysis, but the train of thought in his mind was too chaotic. It couldn't even compare to when he wanted to destroy someone earlier. Cat Eyes didn't utter a single word. Luonan took a sliced apple and took a bite. He didn't feel anything, but his saliva secreted in large amounts once more. Yep, it was sour. At this time, Cat Eyes picked up the canned drink and shook it. This thing is boring. Do you have alcohol? I remember that there's some in the fridge. Shuelei immediately got up to get it. He looked at it and said, there's only a bottle of whiskey left. Do you have ice cubes? I have a can. If you do, then bring it over. Also glasses. I want 3. Huh. You guys come too. What's the point of drinking alone? We're all underage. Shuelei expressed that he was an obedient child. Cat Eyes laughed wantonly. Minors don't drink because their organs haven't fully developed. The stimulation of alcohol will bury hidden dangers. But you guys are already ability users. What are you afraid of? Shuelei was a bit conflicted, but he still tossed and turned in front of the fridge. Cat Eyes took advantage of Shuelei's back facing her to lean toward Luonan. Her red lips whispered by his ear, "Boss, if you want to take advantage of me, hard liquor is a good reason. This is my suggestion." She laughed as she spoke, releasing a seemingly never-ending stream of mockery. Not only toward Luonan but also toward herself. Her slender neck leaned forward, and her half-length hair fell down like a thin curtain. It was the only thing that covered the two's faces. The fragrance and smell of alcohol entered his nose in the most direct way. Luonan's mind buzzed for a moment. His internal and external senses were all warped. He only remembered turning his head, and his lips streaked across the smooth and slightly damp curtain of hair. He touched the side of the exquisite and smooth forehead and stopped there. It was hard to continue, but he was unwilling to move away. "Nanster, I'm here." Xia Junping pushed open the door in a hurry, guiding the bewildering lights of Area A. It just so happened to shine on the bodies of the 2 figures on the sofa. His footsteps slowed and Hu Huaying bumped into his back from behind. Then Emo Han's clear voice rang out behind them. "Hey, who are you guys?" Shuelei, who was furthest inside, turned his head. Then his hand shook and a small portion of the alcohol poured over the ice cubes in the glass. A small portion spilled onto the carpet. The luxurious room suddenly became lively. For the fastest novel reading without errors, please visit Chapter 404. Luonan felt like a dog. Xia Junping and his group didn't show up when he needed them. But when it was the most awkward time, they danced around happily. It was fine if they came, but Emo Peng and Emo Han didn't have fun at the reality battlefield in the Uncanny Valley. Why did they come back? Actually, Emo Peng and Emo Han came back because they were worried. They didn't understand. Why did Luonan fight so well in the hero seat and then give up in such a great situation? His wristband said that he was fine, but how could it be accurate? Emo Peng and Emo Han came back and the others came back with a clamor. Only Yu Qin and Turner were missing. Those 2 were probably embarrassed by Yu Zheng's actions and deliberately hid. But who could compare to Luonan in embarrassment? His intimate actions with Cat Eyes were completely seen by that bastard Xia Junping. Oh, there was also Shuelei. Even if the angle was a bit off, Xia Junping's reaction was more or less the same. Yes, it was Xia Junping's reaction. That bro's reaction was too exaggerated. Not only was he stunned at the door, he actually wanted to turn around and walk out. Walk out my ass. Even if Luonan and Cat Eyes did have a bit of an ambiguous relationship. Well, even if they really kissed, why are you pretending to be pure? Aren't you just luring others to think in the wrong direction? Luonan took a deep breath. Cat Eyes' wine fragrance still lingered in his mouth and nose, including the delicate touch of her hair against his lips. This abruptly woke him up, and he suddenly felt a bit of gratitude towards this old driver. Due to the haste of the matter, he was stunned on the spot. He didn't know how to make evasive movements. He still maintained an extremely intimate and ambiguous relationship with Cat Eyes. In reality, it was just lips kissing forehead. If Xia Junping hadn't reacted too quickly and messed up the formation, Emo Peng, Emo Han, and the others would have definitely seen them. Then they would have exploded. Luckily, he could still salvage the situation. Luonan suddenly straightened his back and stood up. His knees bumped into the coffee table due to the haste. The sound of the crash was quite clear in the room. Xia Junping was quickly pushed in by the door. Emo Peng and Emo Han also swarmed in. The originally empty luxury room was instantly filled to the brim. The fruit and drinks Xie Junping brought weren't afraid that no one would be able to digest. Luo Nan took advantage of the chaos to drag his aching legs 2 steps outside. He nearly bumped into Shuelei, who was returning with a tray of wine. His best friend shifted his body to maintain the balance of the wine tray. He was as dedicated as a real bartender, and he had an innocent expression that said, "I don't know anything" on his face. However, his flickering eyes had long since betrayed him. In comparison, after old driver Xie Junping's initial loss of composure, he and Hu Huaying formed a perfect example of a gang of scoundrels. They spoke and laughed calmly. With a sentence like, "Nanster, are you having a get-together with a beauty?" along with the fruit platter and drinks, they quickly reversed the chaotic and subtle atmosphere in the private room, causing it to become lively. During this time Cat Eyes was very steady. Her posture didn't change at all. It was as if everything that had just happened was an illusion. She even hooked her finger at Shuelei and took a glass of whiskey from the wine tray. She held it in her hand and shook it slightly, making the ice cubes and the whiskey make a slow and monotonous sound as they collided. Luo Nan still had to make way for Shuelei. He felt that he had been reduced to a waiter. Wait a minute. Wasn't this more like a special service personnel? He could not help but clench his teeth. He was embarrassed but also angry. If Cat Eyes wasn't afraid, then what the hell was he afraid of? At this time, the majority of the people who had rushed in had their gazes fall on the sofa corner. They were already unable to see the situation. Cat Eyes sat alone on the sofa's main seat, while Luo Nan and Shuelei stood together. There was a certain distance between the two. If one were to forcefully say that there was, then it would probably be that Cat Eye's makeup and actions were extremely mature and charming. It caused several young men and women to stare stupidly. Then the gazes of a portion of people were attracted by the alcohol set that Shuelei was carrying. Tong Hui of the Gray combo hit the nail on the head with a single sentence. The Adelberg classic. Wow. You guys actually opened the original whiskey. The alcohol content of this whiskey was over 60%, and the taste was quite strong. It was certainly not suitable for young people to drink. Shuelei discovered this when he opened the bottle. He rushed to express, "I'm not drinking it. Whoever wants to drink it can have it." Luo Nan felt his mouth go dry at this time. Perhaps it was because of his guilty conscience, but he felt that Cat Eye's breath lingered on his lips. He saw that the amber alcohol was soaked in ice cubes. It looked quite thirst-quenching and the smell was quite strong. Luo Nan grabbed a glass and drank it in passing. Holy crap! Tong Hui was immediately shocked. Luo Nan also realized that there was a problem. The alcohol entered his throat. Even though the effect of the ice cubes had been released, the burning sensation of the alcohol rushing into his nose and throat and the smoky, fiery and high-pressure taste nearly made him spit it out. Luckily, the orifice of his mouth and tongue operated naturally after being stimulated. The jade liquid of the spirit pond silently moistened his mouth and nose. It melted away the rush that could make one's rationality explode. All that was left was a rich aftertaste that came one after another. Luo Nan unconsciously swallowed the glass of alcohol. Luo Nan didn't know how to appreciate alcohol. He was already quite satisfied that he didn't make a fool of himself on the spot. What truly surprised him was that the orifice of his mouth and tongue had this kind of effect. Even so, he absolutely wouldn't take a second sip. Luo Nan had never had such close contact with alcohol in his 16 years of life, aside from the alcohol stove. After the alcohol entered his stomach, it was as if a fire had been ignited in his entire body. It burned his entire body hot. The restlessness that had just been suppressed seemed to swell up once more. It wasn't that he wanted to do anything. He just felt that there were many ideas that were meaningless. He looked at Cat Eyes. He turned his head to look at the calm and composed beauty on the sofa. He chuckled, feeling that he was right. Mo Ping shouted loudly, "Nanster, you're secretly drinking alcohol." Luo Nan rolled his eyes at him. "I'm thirsty for drinking in broad daylight." For the sake of proof, he simply poured the remaining ice cubes in the glass into his mouth. He chewed a few times and swallowed it all. This method was truly bold. Mo Peng and the others felt a chill in their hearts when they saw it. Tong Hui was very impressed. "One look and you can tell that he's a veteran. Back then I also drank it in one gulp and then I directly sprayed it on my dad's face. Don't tell me that drinking ice cubes can suppress it?" Looked like he really wanted to go home and try it out. Luo Nan observed a moment of silence for him. This brother certainly didn't have the orifice of his mouth and tongue or the ability to transform the jade liquid of the spirit pond. Hopefully, the dual stimulation of alcohol and ice cubes wouldn't cause him to doubt his life. After this interruption, the direction was completely crooked. The awkward atmosphere was pretty much dispelled. Luo Nan's state of mind grew more and more natural. He once again took on the responsibility of being the host and introduced everyone. Xia Junping and Hu Huaying were both seniors of Acumen College. They were older than Mo Peng and the others by 5 or 6 years. They were able to lower their statuses so they were easy to blend in. Luo Nan had only met Sissy Du Young. Luo Nan had only met him once, so he could only give a simple introduction. However, Tianqi was here. A month ago, Du Yong was still the president of the Mystic Arts Research Society. Though he had abdicated his position without much glory, Tianqi, a basic member of the society, was still worth giving everyone an additional introduction. On the other hand, Cat Eye's identity was a bit more difficult to deal with. She had been sitting on the sofa all this time. She had a smile that wasn't a smile. She wasn't close, but she wasn't far. Plus, there was the problem of her name. It was a bit strange to introduce her. Dance teacher. The group of boys and girls were quite confused. This didn't fit in with Luo Nan's circle. Papercut had just returned with Tianxi not too long ago. He didn't even have the time to greet Cat Eyes. As the etiquette teacher, Papercut took it upon himself to block the bullet. He even pulled Tianxi along with him. Didn't you say that you've recently become interested in the mystic arts? Aside from the school society your little brother is in, there are actually some interest societies, hobbyist societies and the like in society. For example, we are all like-minded people who gather together. Cat Eyes is a senior member of this society. You can get closer to her in the future. Tianxi didn't open her mouth after returning to the room, but most of her gaze fell on the sofa corner. Half of it was given to Luo Nan and the other half was given to Cat Eyes. She was suddenly seen through by Papercut and her mind panicked. However, she was quick-witted in the end. She immediately had the awareness to act as a shield. She immediately walked forward, bowed, and extended her hand across the short table. Hello, Sister Cat Eyes. Tianxi. Please advise me in the future. Cat Eyes still hadn't gotten up from the sofa. She just extended her hand and lightly touched Tianxi's. She appeared a bit cold. I can't say advise you, but since you've entered this circle, there are opportunities to exchange experiences. Tianxi smiled warmly. I haven't officially joined yet. Is the day when you're involved with a certain person still far away? Tianxi was a bit startled. She locked gazes with Cat Eyes in the next moment. She only felt that her hair seemed misty, but it was actually cold, clear and sharp. There was also a subtle implication that said, I understand everything. Her heart clenched a bit. He was actually stunned for a time. The two extremely beautiful women looked at each other across the short table. The scene was clearly extremely gorgeous, but under the dim lighting the dark tones quietly played the leading role. There was an instant when the noisy room suddenly quieted down. Then it was covered up by Papercut's pretentious Shanghai laughter. Papercut had done quite well, but he had underestimated the power of the young's imagination. It's a bit weird. Mo Peng and Mo Han whispered to each other. Did you notice? Nanster seems to know only big sisters. Oh, maybe it's aunties. How heartbreaking. Luo Nan held back his laughter and glanced to the side. The current Cat Eyes was indeed decadent. Her flame-red lip makeup and her hairstyle that covered half of her cheeks were very flirtatious. Under the dim lighting she appeared to be much older than Luo Nan, a 15 or 16-year-old student. Perhaps she really was twice his age. Strictly speaking, calling her auntie wasn't a big deal. But the young man's imagination was unleashed. It was a standard weapon of mass destruction. It was impossible to control. Mo Peng said, could it be an indecent relationship or an Azura field? Don't talk nonsense. Maybe they're just friends despite the difference in age. But the problem right now is that the girls Nanster is dating are all older than him. This trend isn't right. Why is it like this? I heard that little Nanster's family situation. What about my family? I'm talking about his birth parents. His parents aren't by his side. He misses them for a long time and so on. Maybe his Oedipus complex is a bit heavy? Searched to death. Luo Nan nearly crushed the empty glass in his hand. Can you two be any louder? Don't you know that a good half of the people in the room are ability users? You're trying to ruin me. Before he could finish his thought, two people in the room had already spat. Papercut had just taken a glass of alcohol from Shuelei and took a sip. He had come back late, so he didn't see the most awkward moments. He lacked resistance and now he collapsed from being teased. It was only logical that he choked on the peat-flavored whiskey. The other person who spat was Xie Junping. It was just that he spat out mineral water. But this was a bit odd. Luo Nan discovered that Xie Junping hadn't touched a drop of alcohol today. He didn't even drink a beverage. He just drank a glass of mineral water. Also, were Mo Peng and Mo Han whispering that loudly? Xie Junping, who was nearly 5 meters away, could actually hear them? When did his eyes and ears become so sharp? Luo Nan sized up Xie Junping seriously. The two hadn't met many times during this time. Luo Nan felt that Xie Junping had gotten a bit thinner, but his spirit wasn't bad. What was funny was that Xie Junping was wearing a very old-fashioned buttoned gown. It was the uniform of an old man who practiced his morning exercises. No matter how Luo Nan looked at it, Xie Junping looked completely out of place in the amusement center. Xie Junping had a very stiff appearance. It didn't seem like he was cosplaying or anything of the sort. Luo Nan thought back to the magical array and other elements that Luo Nan had mentioned before. The matter was quite odd, but it wasn't easy to ask about it. Then he saw Papercut's penetrating insight. People of the same age as Mo Peng and Mo Han shouldn't be placed together with Cat Eyes and the others. There were many topics that simply couldn't be discussed. Papercut was lucky enough to escape the misfortune of spitting out alcohol from his nostrils. He felt that he needed to increase the intensity of his brainwashing, so he ferociously told Mo Peng and the other young boys and girls, "People like us all like those mysterious things. We often get together and exchange our experiences. Cat Eyes and I just happened to be in the vicinity today, so we took the opportunity to come over and play. Please don't mind us if we usurp the host." Oh, no wonder Nanster wanted to join the Mystic Arts Research Society. Mo Peng knew of this situation, so he filled in the blanks in an instant. However, his gaze continued to move back and forth in the corner of the sofa. The Azura arena had nothing to do with one's hobbies. Mo Han's ability to accept these strange things was a bit lacking. She turned to look at her close friends. Mystic Arts. Is it something like tarot cards? Tarot cards are very effective. Chiu Pei, who had always been a person of few words, was actually a fan of the related field. She was a bit excited. This also ignited a small wave of discussion among the girls. Although it was far from Papercut's implicit description, wasn't this the most ideal situation? Luo Nan gave Papercut a thumbs up in his mind. He remembered that Papercut had said this back at Ocean Sky Cloud City. Back then he had fooled Xie Junping and Hu Huaying. Now it was Mo Han and Mo Peng's turn. It could be said that Papercut and Luo Nan were echoing each other without a single flaw. Look, the Mystic Arts Society will definitely be able to help. Xie Junping turned his head to whisper to Du Yong. He had an expression that said, "Listen to me." Du Yong still had a mixture of impatience and skepticism on his face. There are many branches of the mystic arts. Magical arrays are a very specialized field. Papercut's ears were sharp. He tilted his head to look at Du Yong. What did you just say? Magical arrays? Du Yong's patience had long since been exhausted from the tedious introductions. All that was left was impatience. Papercut's question was the same as opening his mouth to release a flood. He didn't care what the situation was. He just raised his voice and said, "Recently old Xia and I were at a club. We made contact with a fellow practitioner. He expressed that he could guide us through the door, but there was a threshold of spiritual awakening that required the assistance of a magical array." His voice was sharp and soft. He spoke quickly, and the field he touched upon was mysterious. In the time it took to say a few words, the group of boys and girls were already confused. Chapter 405. Seeing this, Papercut gave Du Yong a meaningful glance. He wanted Du Yong to slow down. However, Papercut still did not understand Du Yong. This neurotic fellow was already on the verge of collapsing from all his hard work. He would not stop talking. Hu Huaying saw the problem and wanted to stop him, but in the end she was unable to. This brother was completely stuck inside. He just treated everyone present as part of the Mystic Arts Society. He minded his own business and said, "Let me use the projector." He fiddled with his wristband and connected the data to the projector. A dazzling complex diagram appeared in the center of the room's gaming area. It was a combination-type magical array and it looked quite complete. The magical array was roughly divided into 4 layers. The overall composition was a deep blue color, and the symbols at the key nodes were dark red and dark gold. The overall color of the array was restrained, but it was very gorgeous. Wow! Mo Peng and the others gasped in surprise. A neatly pieced together, a perfectly organized diagram. It possessed a very artistic feeling. Those special symbols, configurations, and connecting lines were filled with a mysterious beauty that seemed awesome even though they did not understand it. They did not understand Du Yong's theory, but they could feel the shock from it. Of course, it was more suitable for their imaginations. Du Yong grew more and more irritable when he saw this diagram. He fiercely waved his hand twice, warping the light and shadow of the magical array. It took a moment for it to return to normal. It's this damned format. Damn it. Luo Nan was quite sensitive when he heard the word format. He raised an eyebrow. It's not that format. It's the file format. Xie Junping knew what was bothering Luo Nan. He saw that his companion was unable to communicate normally, so he took the initiative to explain, the wristband doesn't support the file format of this design diagram. We can only enter read-only mode and look at the projection. However, the computer and the projector in the private room was fine, so we copied it and modified it. We didn't expect it to suddenly reset, so we didn't have time to save it. All our efforts were gone. However, even if we didn't save it, the verification itself had failed. He was in a terrible mood in the VIP room, but he calmed down when he arrived at Luo Nan's side. He even laughed at himself. Just a little bit more. Du Yong roared at Xie Junping, but his sharp and gentle voice didn't seem threatening at all. It's all your fault. You should have given up earlier. Why did you cancel the subscription? Xie Junping spoke to him kindly. You've already tried more than 10 times before. Do you remember what tutor said? If you make the same mistake 3 times, it will exceed the limits of rationality. You are full of dochi after that. I think it's not wrong to ask you to calm down. It's rare to see Xie Junping reasoning with someone. Luo Nan snickered to himself, but Papercut came over and whispered, Do you think of anything when you see this thing? Yes, something not so good. Luo Nan knew what Papercut was talking about. Last time at Fudong Main Street's Frost River Reality, it was also a magic array. It was also a member of Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. His name was Huang something. Just like that, the forged human-faced arachnid became the experimental product of the Order of Justice. Luo Nan was still extremely sensitive to such matters. Luo Nan's gaze rested on the projection of the magic array. From the perspective of the mystic arts, Luo Nan didn't have much to say. At most, he had a bit of a basic concept. However, from the perspective of the operational structure of energy and information, he had a bit of a right to speak. He tried to straighten out the order laws and principles inside, and he started with the 3-level structure of formatting theory out of habit. He was entranced for a time. On the other side, Papercut directly asked Luo Nan, This magic array can be used immediately, right? What I mean is that you don't need to arrange and engrave it. You just need to use the light from the projector. Yes. This is what tutor meant. Du Yong nodded like he was pounding garlic. He was actually able to see this point with a single glance. Du Yong's confidence in Papercut and the society instantly rose. Did you hear that? Hey. Papercut wanted to talk privately with Luo Nan, but he saw that this bro was already entranced. Papercut could only give Luo Nan a light nudge, telling him not to rush into a domain that others could not understand. First, figure out the surrounding information. Once you have a direction, you can talk about professional matters. This way you don't have to worry too much. This was the advice of a veteran. Luo Nan was quite convinced. However, Luo Nan really did have a vague idea after sweeping a few glances, and it wasn't from formatting theory. It was a very rare situation. Luo Nan reluctantly glanced a few more times, temporarily turning his mind to the plane of reality. He inexplicably glanced over and saw that Cat Eyes had been tasting wine in the sandy corner all this time. She had poured an unknown number of cups. Cat Eyes is in a bad mood. I can tell that she's in a bad mood. Let's not bother her for now. Papercut indicated for the 2 of them to go first. He felt that Luo Nan wasn't paying attention, so he repeated the information he got from Du Yong. Only then did he laugh. It's a very familiar situation, right? Luo Nan nodded. Papercut wasn't present at the time. He must have read the operation briefing in detail afterward. And the main source of information for this briefing was Luo Nan. Of course he wouldn't forget. It's exactly the same as last time. Are you talking about the order of justice? It shouldn't be. If it's the order of justice, the inner magic ring will certainly show an extremely clear balance or imbalance. It's quite easy to recognize. I learned a bit after the event. It seems that the technique of forming a magic array through projection has spread over the past 2 years. Many orders are doing this. Then, Luo Nan felt that the direction was a bit chaotic. I currently have a direction. The main structure of this magic array is quite complete. It doesn't have those laughable mistakes or the rigidity that imitates ancient times. It isn't some kind of charlatan scammer. The difficulty of drawing it isn't high either. All you need to do is be patient. On the other hand, the so-called adaptive adjustment is quite interesting. It tests one's spirituality and creativity in related fields. It looks like a written entrance exam. Is the order recruiting? It's spiritual awakening. The name matches the reality. However, no order has ever done this before. They place more emphasis on the pious faith of their believers. Luo Nan keenly grasped the most crucial piece of information. Never before? Definitely not. It might not necessarily be an order. It could be a firm like the Society or Her Majesty Empress Wu. Papercut grinned. This is the importance of surrounding information. I just asked little Xia. Their teacher taught them spiritual awakening techniques. There are very clear religious rituals and directions. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. You can just say it directly. Creation. Which one? Chapter 406. Do they really think they're the creator? Luo Nan was astonished. They sure have a big tone. Is it some world-class order? This is where the problem lies. Papercut shrugged. I just did a search. There's no relevant information in the database. Neither the society nor the military and political departments of Xia City have any records of this. In other words, it's very likely that this is a new order, a new power that hasn't entered everyone's line of sight. Aren't you going to consult the secretary about this new information? Luo Nan blinked. Sister Wing, trouble her? Is this a rare situation? Papercut nodded. New orders that are so organized right from the start are indeed rare. Actually, there have been very few new orders in recent years. After all, the area covered by the inner world is growing larger and larger. You know what I mean. Luo Nan really did understand. As the influence of the inner world on the society of the modern world grew stronger and stronger, their ability to unearth and nurture talents was enough to minimize the existence of undiscovered pearls. Under these circumstances, an extremely mature new order suddenly popped out from a crack in the rock. Everyone couldn't help but think in a more conservative direction. Luo Nan was about to contact He Yuan, but he had second thoughts. It would be best to let her take a look at the magical array. It could be considered a reference. He tried to communicate with Du Yong. Can you make a copy of the magical array? No problem. Du Yong was so straightforward that it was suspicious. Xia Junping gave an additional explanation. According to what the instructor said, the matter of spiritual awakening should be done by gathering the wisdom of all parties. There should also be the help of friends to obtain the best plan. There's no need to be so secretive and secretive. It looked like a very open-minded order. Luo Nan and Papercut glanced at each other. Papercut asked in a seemingly casual manner, "Is it convenient for you to introduce the instructor who led you in? Perhaps you know him." Xia Junping was truly magnanimous to a certain extent. He didn't even stumble. His last name is Wan. We all call him Dean Wan. He works in a welfare home in the Forest Wall district. He's truly capable. This sort of information acquisition simply didn't give one any sense of accomplishment. Luo Nan was shaking his head when a light bulb suddenly flashed in his mind. A scene appeared in his mind. It was the memory of him controlling ink to probe the Forest Wall district last week when he was outsourced scouting. He had once seen an ability user there. The ability user had the intention of preaching and preaching. Even children as far away as Trigate district went over to listen. Could it be that person? Of course, it was wrong to make random guesses, But the combination of preaching and forest wall area and other factors increased the chances of success. If it was really him, then that person's career would be much bigger than expected. Luo Nan didn't have any hard evidence for this conjecture. It was hard to explain with the special perspective of long-range perception, so Luo Nan didn't say much to Papercut. He received the document Du Yong transferred over and used the Hexaear to converse with He Yuan. However, in the next second, the other side indicated that it was busy and the call was not connected. This wasn't strange at all. 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening was one of He Yuan's busiest times. Unless it was an extremely urgent matter, it would be pushed to the back. Luo Nan thought for a bit and created a temporary mission. He pulled He Yuan, Papercut, Shuele and Cat Eyes into it. Only then did he send He Yuan a message and a document. It was a multi-party sharing. Papercut glanced at it and said, "Oh, Cloud Map. This is the most suitable mapping software for creating magic arrays. It doesn't seem like a particularly closed sect. That might be good news." Luo Nan noticed that the file displayed a clear icon. The Hexaear can read it. Of course, this kind of practical function still needs to be integrated into it. Luo Nan saw Du Yong gnash his teeth at the read-only projection, but he was unwilling to copy the file onto the computer no matter what. He felt that there really was something wrong with this bro's brain. Luo Nan sighed, "Forget it. Just use mine." He directly connected the Hexaear to the projector. He didn't need to switch. He just opened it from the mission window. He set up an open mode of operation, removing the read-only restriction. Everyone could operate it. He casually swiped and left a clear mark on the magic array. The mark was preserved. In the next moment he cancelled the mark. He tried it a few times and confirmed, "You can modify it now. You can try to recall it and find the feeling. Let us see your train of thought. Relax, this will be preserved at all times." Luo Nan rubbed his fingers halfway through his words. He seemed to be deep in thought. The feeling of light streaking past was very interesting. It also gave him a more direct feeling toward the order and method of the operation of the magic array's energy and information. It made his already fuzzy inspiration become clear once more. His thoughts immediately sank into it. Du Yong was skeptical at first, but he soon saw the tool window of the cloud map software. His heart swelled with enormous joy. He was just about to operate it when he saw Mo Han and a few other girls trying to operate it out of curiosity. He didn't even think before he shouted, "Don't break the template." This shout was the limit of his reprimand. The gentle and quiet Chiu Pei was the most timid. She was so shocked that she took a step back and repeatedly apologized. Mo Han wasn't afraid of him. She was even more annoyed that he had startled her friend. She said disdainfully, "There's a rollback operation. What are you afraid of?" Du Yong was truly shocked by his terrible memory. He shook his head over and over. At this time he displayed an extremely repulsive mentality toward all non-professionals. It was impossible to communicate with this kind of neurotic person. Papercut understood this point very well. He turned to look at the group of boys and girls. "You guys aren't going to play? We professionals. Enthusiasts can discuss it here." Emohan looked at him with wide eyes. Hey, are you guys trying to clear the place and drive people away?" Papercut obviously wouldn't bicker with a little girl. He turned to ask Luo Nan, "How about we change locations first?" He felt that things like data migration couldn't be simpler with the Hexaear. He could also logically separate people. Many things would be easier to talk about. But when he turned his gaze over, he saw that Luo Nan was staring at the magic array without looking away. Luo Nan turned a deaf ear to Papercut's suggestion. Papercut could only bump Luo Nan again helplessly. Oh, hold on. It wasn't easy for Luo Nan to come out this time. He casually responded with a few words, but his gaze remained fixed on the structure of the magic array. He even extended his hand to touch it. Du Yong's tolerance toward this fellow traveler was much higher. He especially liked Luo Nan's ability to concentrate. He even had some expectations. He couldn't help but ask, "You have some inspiration?" "Yes, I have an idea. I feel that this magic array lacks a bit of texture." "Which one?" "Texture. The reality of matter." Luo Nan also needed someone to communicate with him. He observed as he organized his words. "If you view the magic array as a building, then the structure and lines are viewed as rooms and pipelines. Your template is more like a blueprint. There are no materials. There are no fillers. It's just a three-dimensional diagram. What Luonan didn't say was that the magic array that Huang had set up last time had a solid medium. It was intrinsically a level higher than this one. It wasn't the fault of the map. It was the gap between people. And this gap wasn't in mystic arts knowledge. Du Yong was the former president of the Mystic Arts Research Society. He was a level higher than Huang, who didn't do proper work. Then it was very likely that it was thoughts, desires, and other existences on the mental plane. Luonan didn't continue this train of thought. He wasn't a believer of the order of creation. Faith and desires had nothing to do with him. He was more interested in other directions. Could this texture be replaced by other means? More specifically, by the power of the soul or the power of interference. Papercut didn't want to disturb Luonan when he saw Luonan's state. The world in the eyes of a genius like Luonan was intrinsically different from others. The angle and depth in which he looked at problems were greatly different. Inspiration formed from such a perspective was extremely precious. Who would bear the responsibility if it was destroyed? After a moment of hesitation, Xianxia took the initiative to take on the task of dispatching. How about we go play in Area A for a while? Junior Luonan clearly isn't doing his job as a host. I'll entertain him so that he doesn't continue to lose face for our acumen college. Wow, Sister C is so heroic. Xianxia's deliberate derogation clearly suited the appetite of this group of boys and girls. It also lowered their rejection mentality to the minimum. It was extremely effective. On the other side, Hu Huaying wasn't stupid either. She echoed Xianxia's words. I agree with Head Tian's words. The brains of this group of people who study the mystic arts aren't normal. The juniors of 6th High might think that our acumen college is suffering from hysteria. It just so happens that there's a VIP room above us. We can't leave it if we want to. Let's move our position and leave this place for them to play with. The allure of the VIP room exceeded that of the luxury room. It was even stronger than the public area of Area A. Quite a few people's eyes lit up as soon as these words were spoken. Hu Huaying gave Xianxia a meaningful glance, telling her to look after them first. She turned her head to ask Xie Junping for permission. The VIP room was reserved by Xie Junping. The group of people couldn't enter the VIP floor without the appropriate permission. The group of boys and girls walked out the door. Luo Biao whistled. Normal room, luxury room, VIP room. So we're here to play and level up today. Mo Peng nodded fiercely with a drooling face. I've been looking forward to the beautiful girls' dance battle for a long time. The lighting effects of the VIP room will certainly be better. I'll design the lighting costumes later. Dance costumes, sailor costumes, flight attendant costumes, and so on. We'll take turns wearing them. You pervert. Wan Zihue kicked him. Mo Peng laughed and suddenly pulled open the door to escape. But who knew that when he pulled, the weight wasn't right? It tightened and then loosened. Mo Peng used the wrong amount of strength. His body staggered and fell backward, crashing into Luo Biao. The door was pulled open as well. Someone from outside fell head first into the room and fell face first into the mud. Who's? Yu Zheng. Though the figure fell to the ground, he was still recognized when he struggled to get up. At this time, Yu Zheng was wearing a set of external equipment that had anti-collision functions. It didn't hurt, but he was in a sorry state. Yu Zheng was having all sorts of trouble tonight. He had just crawled out of vomit when he fell face first into the mud. His chin had collided with the smooth floor, hurting his mouth, teeth, and tongue. A belly full of evil fire rushed to his head. He crawled up and shoved Mo Peng. Motherfucker, what the hell are you doing? Mo Peng was a bit embarrassed at first, but his expression immediately changed when he was scolded directly in the face. As for that push, it didn't really matter. He wanted to scold back, but he had more confidence in the end. He sneered and said, I wanted to ask you, how does it feel to be F***ed by a hand cannon in all kinds of positions? Yu Zheng's face turned pale, then purple. The only thread of reason in his brain suddenly snapped. He cursed again and swung his fist, smashing it towards Mo Peng's face. Things had happened hastily. Everyone was relying on instinct. Mo Peng was a bit plump, but he was a stout and nimble fatty. He had been smashed on the reality battlefield all year round, so his reaction speed was above that of a normal person. At this distance, he lowered his body and didn't use his fists or feet. He directly went for a headbutt. His round head, along with the sharp and angular tactical helmet, struck between Yu Zheng's chest and abdomen. The impact wasn't small. Yu Zheng's drunkenness hadn't dissipated yet, so he nearly vomited again after this collision. What was even worse was that his balance had been lost. Last time he fell forward and this time he fell backward. Fortunately, there was a place to lean on behind him. When he tripped, his shoulder hit someone's chest and the back of his head collided with something that was soft but not hard. Then he heard a stifled, muffled cry. Zhu Maoxuan's indistinct and hoarse cursing echoed in his ears. But Zhu Maoxuan was lying on the ground. He was also a bit stunned. It was reasonable to say that Yu Xing causing a ruckus was advantageous to him. In any case, they were all students of 6th High and companions who had come together. If they really did cause a ruckus, the ones who would be making a fool of themselves would be that group of people. He could watch from the sidelines and taunt them a few times to take advantage of them. This was one of the best results he could think of. Even if Yu Zheng hadn't caused a ruckus, he would have urged him on from the back. But how did things suddenly turn out like this? After a brief moment of confusion, the feelings on his face and body finally had a realistic explanation. Yu Zheng was on top of him and sticky juice had splashed all over his face. The large cup of juice had even smashed into his head. Of course, the most painful part was the bridge of his nose. The back of Yu Zheng's head had smashed into it, and the bitter and fishy taste had mixed in with the juice and flowed into his mouth. It was clear that he had seen blood. Zhu Maoxuan could have dodged it. The elite society under his command appeared as a combat society most of the time. His skills were quite good. But the problem was that there were far too many people following behind him. There were 2 waiters carrying wine and fruit trays, and there were also 2 friends of scoundrels that he had brought along for the sake of raising his aura. The 4 of them blocked him tightly. No matter how good his skills were, it was impossible for him to break through. Sure enough, he shouldn't have come. What should have been a relaxing and pleasant journey of face-slapping had turned him into the spearhead. That fellow Juling was not on the same path as him. That was why he had fallen into such a plight. It must be known that this was Frost River Reality Area A. It was one of the most densely populated areas in all of Xia City. This was especially true since this was Cloud City Water Village, a large residential area. The people who came and went were players from the surrounding colleges and high schools. They overlapped greatly with his life circle. He fell here with his 4 limbs facing the sky. His nose was overflowing with blood and juice was splashed all over his face. There seemed to be flashing lights all around him. There was no need for tomorrow. Tonight, his dignified appearance would be spread to every major college forum. This was Zhu Maoxuan's final rational thought. In the next moment, whatever face-slapping plan he had completely collapsed. Zhu Maoxuan roared as he pushed away Yu Zheng, who was still in a stupefied state. He struggled to get up and casually picked up the large cup of juice beside him. Disregarding everything else, he smashed it towards the most densely populated area in front of him. "I'll chop you bastards to pieces." A muffled crash rang out, followed by the screams of a girl. Chapter 407. The matter had undoubtedly blown up. In a short few minutes, the parties involved, waiters, police, doctors, and a large number of onlookers filled Area A of Frost River Reality to the point that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Qiu Peipei had already been sent to the hospital for treatment. Mo Han and Ruan Zihui had also gone to the hospital to take care of her. The remaining people continued to confront each other in the luxury room. It had to be said that the police were not slow. After the incident at Frost River Reality, the government's level of control over public occasions had risen by at least 2 levels. Fortunately, if they had been a bit slower, Zhu Maoxuan would have probably been sent to the hospital on a stretcher assembled by multifunctional robots. After confirming who the main culprit was, Shuelei punched him to the ground. He still couldn't straighten his back. The terrifying spasms of his internal organs transmitted the negative effects to his brain through his nervous system. It made Zhu Maoxuan want to vomit and feel dizzy. However, no injuries could be seen on the surface. Because there were too many onlookers and quite a few people involved, the dispatched police did not take the group away from the scene. Instead, they rushed to the room to understand the situation. The police's inquiry was very simple. They were not interested in complicated grudges. After all, this was just a relatively ordinary public security dispute. The surveillance was very complete, so it was not difficult to make a judgment. Because the hospital's injury examination results had not yet come out, The dispatched police routinely left the social authority numbers of the parties involved. They informed both sides of the process of mediation and civil prosecution. Then they informed them of the location and time limit for the injury examination. The dispatched police process was completed. Next, Mo Peng Shuilei, Yu Zheng and Zhu Maoxuan had to go to the police station to make statements. Zhu Maoxuan was fine. He was already an adult and had the ability to act. As for the other three, they had to notify their guardians according to the rules. All of a sudden, the faces of the three turned ugly. Mo Peng and Shuilei were simply worried about being reprimanded by their parents. Yu Zheng's feelings were much more complicated. In fact, when he recovered from his stupor and entered the room and saw the people inside, he hated that he could not immediately kill himself on the floor. Did the heavens specifically come to torment him tonight? We give up the prosecution and request mediation. The one who spoke was Yu Qin. She and Turner hurriedly entered and immediately expressed their stance. At the same time, they took out their guardian's electronic authorization. I am the younger sister of the party involved, Yu Zheng. My father already knows of this matter. This is our stance. Yu Zheng blankly looked over. There was no effective response. Seeing her brother in a daze, Yu Qin was both angry and annoyed. But in terms of cool-headedness, she was 10 times stronger than her brother. She could already see Xie Junping and Hu Huaying standing by Luo Nan's side with dark faces. In fact, the majority of her stated attitude was directed at these two masters. Wuxia Pharmaceutical Company could not afford to offend the Xie family and the Hu family. They were even more unwilling to give their peers a reason to talk about them and expose their flaws. Yu Qin had done her best to understand the situation, inform her father and obtain the relevant authorization in just a few minutes. Unfortunately, from the looks of the current situation, the effects were minimal. Yu Qin didn't take the initiative to talk nonsense. After making her stand clear, she stood with her brother and helped him tidy up his appearance. She took the opportunity to observe the situation in the room. She had seen Xie Junping before. She knew that he was a playboy, a first-class hedonist. But the way he was dressed right now, the way he stood by Luo Nan's side, the way he unconsciously whispered into Luo Nan's ear. No matter how she looked at it, he didn't look like the main character. She seemed to have misjudged the direction from the beginning. In fact, what Yu Zheng did, what the Yu family or Wuxia Pharmaceutical Company didn't really matter. Yu Qin's declaration was just a small interlude. Not many people heard it. At most, she earned a fierce glare from Zhu Maoxuan. Zhu Maoxuan was certainly the most restless person in the room. He saw that his gang of scoundrels from the VIP room had all come down. They couldn't be of much help, but they could support themselves. They could reason with the police. They weren't afraid at all. They had an imposing aura. However, the most crucial person was missing from the list. Zhu Maoxuan turned his head left and right, but he still didn't see anything. He could only ask his friends, "Where's Zhu Ling?" He seems to have gone back upstairs. Zhu Maoxuan only knew now that he and Yu Zheng had gone downstairs to act as gunmen. Zhu Ling, who had made this request, had disappeared without a trace. Zhu Maoxuan's mind immediately exploded. At this time, the police were still carrying out legal education. Zhu Maoxuan's anger rose to his head when he heard this. He suddenly kicked over the high back chair beside him. "Give this nonsense to a fucking lawyer. I want to examine my injuries right now." Zhu Maoxuan's movements were large, and his already spasming internal organs gave him an even worse experience. His body bent like a prawn. Gastric acid sprayed out, burning his throat painfully. His tears and snot also choked out. Shuilei, the one who had done this, didn't even bother to glance at him. He obediently accepted the police's questioning. His attitude was more than 10 times stronger. At most, he was a bit worried because he had invited his parents. Xie Junping and Hu Huaying stood up at this time. They were Acumen College's student council officials. They didn't lack connections and they were experienced in negotiating with the police. They could be considered good doctors after a long illness. They were the best candidates to handle this kind of matter. In addition, there was Tianxi, an expert in communication. She checked for any gaps and filled in any gaps. It seemed that everything was developing in their favor. As for the ability users in the room, they exchanged glances with each other. It was quite awkward. Indeed, they were all gathered inside the room. They studied the magical array, drank and so on. There was a certain distance between them and the conflict zone at the entrance. But to let a delicate little girl get hurt right under their noses was still a very shameful thing. Even Luo Nan was no longer in the mood to study the magical array. He sized Zhu Maoxuan up and down. He recalled the old events at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He could more or less determine the cause, and he felt more and more displeased. He really wanted to find a way to fix things. And it was because of this concern that he heard the name Zhu Ling through his mental senses. Judging from Zhu Maoxuan's intense emotions, it seemed that the situation was more complicated than it seemed. Actually, Luo Nan didn't need to think about the current situation. However, he hadn't been of any use at all in the beginning, and it seemed that there wasn't much use for him in the future. It made him feel uncomfortable. Luo Nan's mind spun a few times, and he seized the opportunity to pull Xie Junping over. He asked, "Who's Zhu Ling?" "Zhu Ling?" Xie Junping shook his head. "I've never heard of him. He's not in this circle. Is he a relative of Zhu Maoxuan? Why don't you ask and see?" Luo Nan activated his living starry sky senses as he spoke, bringing the entire aurora cloud into the range of his senses. At this time, there should be about 10,000 people stationed in Aurora Cloud Capital. Sorting out the tracks of thousands of people would have been a painful process in the past. But right now, Luo Nan had an initial grasp of the warning senses of a closed system. It was much easier for him to divide them according to the level of threat. What he sensed was rather subtle. The strongest reaction of malice came from Zhu Maoxuan not too far away. Luo Nan should have discovered this a long time ago. It was just that although this person's evil intent was strong, his body didn't possess any extraordinary strength. The stimulation was very weak. Plus, Luo Nan had been immersed in the study of magical arrays, so he had unconsciously overlooked this. From this, it could be seen that the alertness of a closed system in a passive state could very likely ignore a considerable amount of information. He had to pay attention to this in the future. Luo Nan continued to comb through the information. It didn't take much effort before he found 2 targets. However, it was not a malicious reaction. It was not even from Frost River reality but from a higher level. What attracted Luo Nan was undoubtedly the special reflection of these 2 in the living starry sky. Ability user. And one of the ability users was quite extraordinary. There was a clear distortion to the surrounding starry sky. It was as if it was being burned by incorporeal smoke. If Luo Nan had observed it 2 days earlier, he would have only been able to see a gloomy and blurry nebula without the aid of the telescope. Making a preliminary judgment from this standard, this was already a B-rank ability user. There was another rather interesting point. Although there was a difference in strength between these 2 people when comparing the constellation structures of the 2, there were quite a few similarities. Moreover, Luo Nan was quite familiar with it. An upright tetrahedron. A burner. It was not strange to see 2 burners in Xia City. The society's statistics showed that there were over 300 of them. Most of them were in the military. A small portion belonged to Quantum Corporation. They were out for a stroll and a meal. It was quite normal to bump into them in Cloud City Water Village. These 2 people didn't seem to have anything to do with the conflict below. Luo Nan didn't feel any element of malice from them. The living starry sky indicated that he didn't have any connection with these 2 people in any real sense. Luo Nan didn't want to complicate matters. He carefully examined the burner that he suspected to be a B-rank ability user. The strength it displayed was quite astonishing. Although its format of fire was restrained, its pressure had already penetrated the depths of the mental plane. In the general sense of the 3 levels, 1 region and 1 realm, it should have touched upon the edge of the abyss region. It would have been fine if this was compared to the mentally enhanced side, but everyone knew that burners were all fleshly enhanced. To be able to obtain this kind of result as an assistant section master meant that he was already on the same level as the ears of Truth Fairchild. Did Xia City have a burner of this level? He Yuan had explained the relevant information to Luo Nan, but he had no recollection of it. Out of caution, Luo Nan controlled his soul strength to maintain a distance from the material plane. He gave up on observing the burner's true appearance to avoid being captured. That would be awkward. Luo Nan memorized the location and removed his senses. He didn't discover anything else after that. It seemed that this was indeed an exception. However, the appearance of a B-rank burner required his companions to be notified. This was to avoid sudden events affecting them. This was experience, and it was also a principle. He Yuan and the others had been emphasizing similar requirements in their lectures for some time now. Luo Nan immediately published this information in the temporary mission window. There's a suspected B-rank burner and a C-rank burner. The two should be together. Their location is above Frost River Reality.